Close-up of shoes. As the person takes a step, there is a sense of dynamism. As if the action is happening quickly, perhaps it is running in rainy weather. A character in a light jacket and blue trousers runs along wet asphalt, leaving splashes behind him. The rain increases the atmosphere of tension. A foot in a red sneaker pushes off the floor tensely, as if overcoming an invisible obstacle on the way forward. A scene in a gym where a man is squatting with a heavy weight on his shoulders. Another man with a tense expression stands next to him, encouraging him. A man is working out on a machine, tensely squeezing the levers, his face showing a serious attitude and concentration. A group of people with phones in their hands are standing on the street. The character in the blue jacket looks worried. Perhaps they received an unexpected message. A view from behind of a man with blue hair, holding some object in his hand. The main character stands in a crowd, looking at the screen of his phone, where he just saw a video. Bewilderment and anxiety are visible in his eyes. He cannot understand why this video looks so realistic. His gaze is intense as he tries to comprehend what he has seen. Questions about what is happening on Earth popping into his head. He looks thoughtfully into the distance, aware of how many fake videos have appeared on the internet lately. The guy looks down, bewildered, seeing someone unexpected in front of him. A strange creature with a bloody leg sits on the ground, chained. The creature, breathing convulsively, utters a few words with difficulty, clearly in great pain. The guy suddenly remembers that he has an appointment with a math tutor. The monster, hearing his words, looks confused and scared, but hope appears in his eyes. He notices that the creature seems to need help, which confuses him. The creature's eyes reflect tears spilling out, symbolizing struggle and internal pain. Doubts torment the guy, because he believes that he is not kind enough to sympathize with the monster. The creature shows an old photograph of his family, in which the three elves are hugging, beaming with happy smiles. It looks at the photo, barely holding back tears. The past comes alive in its eyes, filling them with deep sadness. The young man's face is distorted with surprise and alarm at this unexpected story. The elf hands the hero something like a magic pill, silently handing it over as thanks for his help. The hero holds a magic pill in his hands, immersed in his thoughts, realizing that everything turned out to be completely different from what he thought. Lee holds the magic pill in his hand, puzzled as to its purpose. He looks at it, doubting whether this strange gift can be used at all, especially given its unknown origin. At this moment, the television begins to broadcast an urgent message about mysterious phenomena around the world. The TV screen reports on giant towers that suddenly appeared from underground, leaving everyone in a state of shock. The hero, holding the pill, heads to the window to see if something has happened in his city. A powerful explosion blows out the window, forcing the hero to jump back in an attempt to escape. His gaze is filled with panic and bewilderment, not understanding what is happening around him. People in the city begin to run in fear, screaming and trying to escape from the unknown threat. A tall tower rising above the horizon slowly takes shape, filling the air with an unsettling energy. The tower seems to reach into the sky, its top hidden in the clouds, exuding a mysterious and ominous power. The hero looks at the screen, where they report that a mysterious tower has also appeared in Korea. He holds the magic pill to his lips, not knowing if he is doing the right thing. But the feeling that for the first time he can do something so crazy pushes him. After taking the pill, his body is illuminated with a powerful glow, as if magic itself is penetrating inside. A glowing portal suddenly opens before him, emitting a blinding light. A magic book appears from the portal, shimmering with blue light, as if inviting you to it. He carefully takes the book in his hands, noticing the intricate patterns on the cover. The pages are blank, but it feels like there is great power hidden within them. Suddenly the book opens, and a powerful light comes out of it, which instantly envelops everything around. Finding himself in an unfamiliar place, he sees dense greenery and bright colors around him, completely different from the familiar world. Suddenly a hologram appears in front of him, demonstrating a fiery sword. He reaches for it, realizing that this is only the beginning of an extraordinary adventure. He is overwhelmed by what is happening around him, trying to make sense of the new reality. Holograms filled with information appear before him, and he sighs, realizing that there is a lot of knowledge and skills ahead of him that he needs to master. A sword materializes in his hand, sparkling with magical light, and he grips the hilt tightly, preparing for the test. Smiling, he realizes that his journey has only just begun. A text appears on the hologram in front of him, offering 2 missions: to survive in the forest or to find a way out. Now it is clear that this is not just a game, but a real challenge. He studies the information, taking into account all possible clues, the determination in his eyes growing. Sword at the ready, he prepares for his first training session, feeling his worldview gradually change. A creature appears in front of him, a furry raccoon with a horn on its forehead. The raccoon looks pretty cute, clearly not fitting the idea of what an enemy on this new path should be. The one-horned raccoon suddenly changes, becoming vicious and bearing sharp claws, his eyes flashing with fury. With a loud roar, the creature leaps towards the enemy, preparing to strike from above. The swordsman reacts quickly, swinging his sword sharply and pointing it straight at the enemy. The raccoon falls, and a hologram appears nearby, informing about the experience gained. The hologram displays information about mana consumption during basic sword use, and he understands that the 10 units of mana he has are only enough for 5 attacks. I need to raise my mana level while hunting, he decides, cutting through his enemy. Gripping the hilt of his sword, he aims at his next target, showing complete determination. A powerful swing of the sword cuts through the air, rapidly approaching the enemy. The hologram informs about reaching the 2nd level and restoring mana and health. He notices the light coming from his body and a look of surprise flashes in his eyes. His face is distorted with confusion, because from the hologram he learns that his level will increase more slowly than the others. Lee is puzzled as to why he still has any glasses available. A smile appears on his face as he realizes that his sage status is possibly a powerful bug. He stands over a fallen enemy, holding a sword in his hand, with a hologram hanging nearby showing his current status. The protagonist ponders which characteristic should be improved to increase his chances in battle. Having made his choice, he rushes forward, using all his power and speed to attack. Holding the sword in his hand, he feels confident and ready for the upcoming challenges. After intense training, defeated opponents lie around him, demonstrating his growing strength. The hero notices that his sensitivity has reached 20, and he feels satisfaction with the progress. However, suddenly his gaze changes, and there is a sense of danger coming from the depths of the forest. Before him appears a monster whose strength clearly surpasses all those he has encountered before. The hero turns towards the monster, who is approaching menacingly, foreshadowing the beginning of a new battle. The monster, with glowing red eyes, prepares to attack, inspiring fear and awe. The boy realizes that he has to fight with all his skill when the monster rushes at him. The character leaps forward with a sword, his movements confident and fast, like those of an experienced warrior. Suddenly he finds himself in a defensive position, jumping back to avoid the enemy's blow. His face expresses tension and concentration, because every wrong step could be fatal in this battle. The horned monster, losing control, crashes its sharp horn straight into the trunk of a tree. The monster pulled its horns out of the tree and again assumed a fighting stance, preparing for a new attack. Without wasting a second, the character lowers his sword, trying to maintain the initiative in the fight. The battle escalates, tension reaches its limit, and the character tries with all his might to prevent the enemy from delivering the fatal blow. His eyes are full of determination. They express not only the will to win, but also unshakable confidence in his own strength. A second decides the outcome of the battle, and the character delivers a precise blow, striking the enemy with all his skill. The sword whistles through the air and the character delivers a finishing blow aimed straight at the monster's weak spot. After such a battle, he is confident that he should be leveled up to 7. Time drags on incredibly slowly, and he never expected that an hour would seem like an eternity to him. Looking around, he realizes that the enemy is almost defeated, but it is too early to relax. The sudden movement caught him by surprise, and he realizes that it all ended faster than he expected. A group of people, including him, suddenly found themselves in a new room surrounded by a strange red light. Everyone froze, watching the huge mechanism that appeared in the air before them. A message came over the microphone stating that the training was complete and they were ready for the next stage of testing. The two boys looked up and noticed the message coming from the microphone. The girl looks confused as she listens attentively to the announcement. A man with pronounced muscles and a displeased expression on his face reacts tensely to what is happening in the tower. The guy looked at his surroundings, trying to figure out where he was. There were 14 men and 11 women around who had also just completed their training. Panic broke out among the group, and everyone began to wonder what was going on. The guy realized that the main thing was not to give in to the general panic and to stay cool. At this point, the young woman asks in surprise what this place is. The girl looked stunned, not understanding what was happening around her. A strange rabbit in a suit appeared and raised his paw in greeting, attracting the attention of the assembled people. A white rabbit in a suit appears, introducing himself as the manager of the tower's lower floor. Everyone around begins to be surprised by his sudden appearance and discuss who it is. The rabbit himself notes that people's reaction is quite expected in such a situation. Lee Ho-yoon turns to the rabbit, trying to figure out what will happen next. The protagonist, at a loss, asks what they should do if it really is the end of the world. The rabbit, with a sly smile, calls the question excellent and is clearly preparing something unpleasant. Suddenly, his expression turns sinister as he tells them about the deadly game they are about to participate in. People react to this news with horror, realizing that their lives are now at risk. The rabbit explains that all the people from Earth are trapped in a tower, and to survive, they must climb higher and higher, overcoming challenges on each floor. Lee Ho-yoon, realizing the seriousness of the situation, asks if they can return to their old lives if they reach the very top of the tower. The rabbit suddenly admits that he himself does not know the answer to this question, creating additional tension. The protagonist wonders why he should climb up if he is not sure that it will help, to which the rabbit responds mockingly, suggesting not to look for meaning in everything. At the end of the scene, the rabbit warns that those who remain below are doomed to die, thus pushing everyone to action. The rabbit mentions that a lot of people died during the training phase, causing the participants to think about the real danger of what is happening. Lee Ho-yoon begins to doubt his actions and wonders why he didn't think about the risk earlier. The rabbit, with a mysterious smile, declares that it is now time to act, intriguing and causing anxiety among the participants. He provocatively invites someone from the group to try to kill him, clearly manipulating their emotions. Lee Ho-yoon begins to suspect that this is a trap, as the rabbit hints at a special reward for whoever helps him return home, which causes the hero to have new doubts. The rabbit grins and says that he is looking for people willing to help him get home. The protagonist decides to watch from the sidelines, afraid to attack a rabbit with such a high level. He wonders if he can actually attack the rabbit, but fears that it is a trap. He reflects that the advice he has received so far has not led to bad consequences, but he is plagued by doubts. The hero is in a state of stress, wondering how he should act next. One of the participants decides to take the initiative and declares that he is ready to help the rabbit return home, which surprises the others. With a mad determination, this same participant is delighted at the opportunity to return home and expresses confidence that everything will work out. The contestant, with a crazy smile, declares that he will finally be able to return home and threatens that no one will regret it more than his opponent. As the participant prepares to attack, the rabbit suddenly appears in front of him with a sly expression, as if inviting him to continue, but clearly ready for a response. Suddenly, the rabbit's fist slams into the opponent's face, knocking him unconscious and revealing its true strength. The rabbit delivers a devastating blow with a bright burst of light, demonstrating its strength. Participants watch in shock, trying to keep their distance as blood from the blow flies past them, causing fear. One of the participants is hit, blood spurts in all directions. The rabbit admits with a cold smile that he accidentally counterattacked, but continues his actions intentionally. The rest of the participants panic, realizing that their comrade was unable to withstand the strength of the rabbit. The protagonist stands in the middle of the chaos, watching as one of the participants ends up dead. He understands that anyone could have been in his place. The rabbit turns to the others with a grin, inviting the next participant to try his luck. The protagonist suspects that the guide lied to him and tries to understand why this happened. In the process, he discovers that he has unlocked new abilities, but does not understand why they have only just activated. Lee Ho-yoon activates the sage's eye and begins to see the rabbit differently, realizing that it is just a hologram. He smiles calmly, realizing that he finally understands what is happening and that the rabbit is not really a threat. The hero decides to take on the task and confidently declares his intention to act, despite the low level. Rabbit, realizing that Lee is revealing his deception, mockingly says that level doesn't matter as long as it's for a good cause. The girl tries to stop the main character, pointing out the danger and remembering how another participant was recently killed. The hero confidently replies that he has a plan, reassuring the girl but surprising her. With a slight grin, he warns that he will show something exciting, preparing for action and holding the weapon confidently. The rabbit charges furiously and swings his arm, preparing to deliver a powerful blow. The opponent responds to the rabbit's attack with a decisive parry, demonstrating his agility. A bright light appears in his eyes, indicating that new abilities are activating. Lee Ho-yoon says that the first person who attacked the rabbit turned out to be a hologram created by Kumkum, which explains the rabbit's sudden victory in the battle. The rabbit, who also turns out to be a hologram, begins to disappear, leaving behind only an ironic comment and a hint of Lee Ho-yoon's bravery. Kumkum, with irony and menace, wishes good luck to those who decided to fight, adding drama to the moment. The protagonist breathes out in relief, realizing that his suspicions about the hologram were confirmed, and the threat is not as great as it seemed. A blue ball falls to the ground, which may be some important resource. The participants surround the ball, and the system shows that it is a characteristic point, which creates even more interest. One of the participants notices with surprise that in front of him was not a real body, but a hologram. Lee Ho-yoon is asked how he knew it was all fake, and he explains his observations. Lee says he noticed blood running through the contestant, which led him to believe it was a hologram. Another participant greets the main character, expressing doubts about the correctness of his conclusions. One of the members accuses Lee Hoyun of just being lucky and states that he would have intervened if he had noticed the situation in time. Lee Hoyun asks what it means to be in vain, to which he is told that still being at level 1 means either weakness or running away from battle. The red-haired member states that Lee Hoyun will die quickly, offering to give him a chance for the sake of all humanity. However, the main character, having received 1 point of characteristics, decisively declares that giving in is not in his habits. The participant disdainfully calls Lee Hoyun cannon fodder, marveling at his greed and determination to fight to the end. Lee Hoyun muses that, based on experience, it is best to avoid people like his opponent, but wonders how long he can maintain this approach. Suddenly it is announced that from this moment on the distribution of gold will begin, which causes surprise among everyone present. The system informs that gold can be used in the shop, and its amount will increase depending on the number of monsters that the participants destroyed during the training process. One of the participants receives the largest amount of starting gold, 7,400 gold, which surprises everyone else. Kim regrets not hunting better after learning of such a generous reward, and admires the first place winner. Lee Hoyun reflects on his first place win but doesn't plan to reveal it. He is looking into the possibility of purchasing items and upgrading stats through the interface. One of the participants is outraged by the high cost of improvements and wants to improve his fencing skill. Lee Hoyun decides to change out of her gym uniform for more appropriate clothing. A girl approaches Lee Hoyun, asking for forgiveness and calling him by name. It turns out to be Jae-Yo-Sol, who asks him for advice. The heroine admits that she is impressed by his courage, despite his low level. Lee Hoyun asks Jae-Yo-Sol how much gold she has, and after seeing through the sage's eyes that she honestly answered 800, he thinks that he needs to hide his use of the cheat code. The protagonist asks her if she likes doing sports, and makes a conclusion about her endurance level. Jae-Yo-Sol thanks him for his advice and promises to follow his recommendations. A mission will begin on the first floor soon, and players are asked to create a team of 3. Players who are not in a group will be randomly assigned, which has caused some concern. The protagonist reflects on the fact that the task started earlier than he expected, although he foresaw a group task. The girl invites the hero to join forces with her, and he agrees, seeing no reason to refuse the healer. The other players refuse to join the protagonist's team, which makes him think about his chances. Even though there is a healer in the party, others are worried about the low combat skill of the level 1 swordsman. The 4th level players have already created their groups and look relaxed, unlike the others. The time ran out, and the incomplete groups were filled randomly, causing the protagonist to become agitated. The main character is joined by Kim, who is unhappy with being in the same group with such weak players. Lee Hoyun wonders if he can cooperate with Kim despite his aggressiveness. The group is given the task of destroying a tribe of kobolds, and they have 12 hours to do it. Kim confidently declares that he will destroy the kobold tribe single-handedly, and demands that they not interfere with him. An aggressively minded Kim mocks the protagonist, accusing him of talking too much. The protagonist decides to act cautiously and agrees to follow Kim's tale to test his abilities. Kim sarcastically says that the main character only becomes active when his life is in danger. The healer on the team begins to worry about whether everything will be okay with such an aggressive ally. Kim is outraged by the large number of bugs and believes that they will be able to cope with the task without any problems. The protagonist, along with the rest of the group, continues to move forward, observing the surroundings. He notes that there are indeed a lot of insects, since they are found in the mountains. Lee notices strange fruits on the trees and wonders what it could mean. The protagonist assumes that the kobold must be strong, but believes that it is possible to deal with him, since they are still at the 1st level. Despite this, the protagonist warns that they must be on guard, because this is the tower of the end of the world. Suddenly, a level 5 kobold appears in front of them, shocking the protagonist due to its strength. Jay is worried about what to do next as this monster is clearly stronger than they expected. The protagonist suggests first examining the surrounding area to make sure there are no other kobolds nearby. However, Kim is furious and shouts that the protagonist is hiding like a coward, like a weakling. Kim charges into battle with the kobold, showing off her power and attacking with all her might. Despite Kim's aggression, the kobold does not give up and continues the fight, which enrages Kim. Kim, full of confidence and aggression, taunts the kobold when he sees that he is still holding his own in the fight. Lee admits he underestimated Kim's tenacity and determination. Jay offers his help, using his healing abilities to support Kim in the fight against the kobold. Kim continues to attack, wondering where the rest of the kobolds are. The protagonist realizes that Kim is truly up to his level, and with Jay's help he might be able to defeat the kobold. However, the hero notices that the damage Kim deals is too little for such a fight, and begins to suspect that the kobold has a hidden weakness. The handbook states that kobolds are generally passive monsters that will not attack unless provoked. The protagonist realizes that Kim has essentially stirred up a hornet's nest for no reason by starting this battle. Kim continues to attack furiously, yelling at the kobold to die. Suddenly, a new kobold appears and gets hit by a broken tree that Kim destroyed during the battle, making things even more difficult for the entire team. The tree falls on the kobold's head, but despite this, he barely reacts to the blow. It is suddenly revealed that the kobold is level 6, which shocks Kim and causes him to curse in bewilderment. The new kobold quickly rushes into battle, threatening the lives of Kim and the rest of the group. Jay, noticing the danger, warns Kim, but does not manage to get out of the way of the blow. As a result, she falls to the ground, having received a strong blow and not having time to react to the attack in time. The heroine turns around at the last moment, noticing that a kobold is flying towards her. At this time, the kobold furiously prepares to strike again. A fruit flies straight towards the kobold, but he does not see it, not realizing that it carries a mortal threat. At this point, the protagonist activates his basic swordsmanship and, at the critical moment, cuts the strange fruit on his blade. This fruit instantly deals fatal damage to a kobold, thanks to the power released during a sword strike. The kobold is shocked, his body begins to boil, and he realizes that he was defeated in an unusual way. The defeated kobold loses its powers at the last moment and begins to disintegrate under the influence of magical damage. When thrown, the fruit explodes in a purple flash, dealing heavy damage to the kobold. The level 6 kobold has been destroyed. Kim is shocked and angry and can't believe that the protagonist managed to defeat the kobold in such a way. Jay joyfully calls out to the protagonist, admiring his actions. The main character admits with a smile that such an outcome of the battle was entirely expected for him. He recalls noticing that the insects were eating all the fruits except one, which led him to wonder about the strangeness of the fruits. They look unusual and mysterious, which immediately attracts his attention and suggests that they can play a key role in his strategy. The poison apples were his key to victory, and he pulled them out of his inventory at the right moment. The handbook explains that kobolds are vulnerable to poison, and the hero used this knowledge to destroy the enemy. The protagonist, after making sure that Jay is okay, helps her up, to which she thanks him for his help. Kim angrily accuses the protagonist of slacking off and hiding in the bushes when the fight begins. The main character looks at him with bewilderment, trying to understand what he is talking about. Kim, convinced that he is right, leaves, believing that the protagonist is indebted to him. The main character just sighs, coming to the conclusion that Kim is not quite right in the head. Kim charges into battle, proudly declaring that he made a name for himself with his fists. He attacks furiously, but the kobold knocks him down with a powerful blow from his club. Despite being wounded, Kim screams that he cannot be stopped and will continue to fight. Kim looks at Lee and Jay in confusion, wondering how they can deal with the kobolds so easily. Kim continues to charge at the kobolds, showing off his strength, but suddenly one of them delivers a powerful blow to his head. As a result of this blow, Kim falls to the ground, unable to defend himself from their attack. Kim tries to defend herself from the blows, covering her head with her hands and not understanding what is happening. Lee suddenly attacks the kobolds that were attacking Kim, quickly disarming them with his sword. After a powerful attack, the kobolds can't take it anymore and explode, flying in all directions. Lee stands in front of the defeated Kim, demonstrating his superiority. After the monsters are defeated, Kim begins to laugh in relief and is happy that it's all over, expressing a mixture of joy and shock at what happened. Everyone returns to the lobby after completing the task. Kim kneels before Lee, amazed by his strength, and calls him Sir. Jay and Lee level up, leaving Kim to watch in frustration. Despite her internal struggle with shame, Kim realizes that she cannot back down from her path. They realize that they completed the task faster than anyone else, thanks to their knowledge of the kobold's vulnerabilities. The girl admires the protagonist's observation, admitting that she herself would not have guessed to use poison. The main character sheepishly notes that without the girl's support, it would have been much more difficult for them. The hero notices the other teams returning through the portal, watching their arrival closely. The heroine joyfully welcomes the return of another squad, noting their success. The protagonist thinks that the other teams probably also figured out how to use poison. The next squad returns, but without one member, which is worrying. The heroine asks in surprise where the third member of the team is. The surviving participant, with pain in his voice, explains that only 2 were able to return. A flashback shows the party members fighting the kobolds while 2 try to escape. Despite the losses, the first level task was completed by all units. J reports with concern that not all of the troops have returned. Lee receives information that 8 players have not returned from the mission. The hero reflects that although he expected that not everyone would return alive, he did not think that so many people would die. The rewards for completing the first level task are calculated, and the players who have returned in full force are shown. Lee, Jay, and Kim look at their results and realize that their squad completed the task first. Lee and his team receive information that they completed the task first. Lee wonders which squad got it done first. The main character thinks that it will not be possible to hide the fact of the primacy, since the second squad already knows. Lee decides to tell Wee, admitting that their squad was the first. Kim happily agrees with the result, and adds that it was an obvious result, seeing nothing surprising in it, and asking the others not to be upset. Players from other squads are surprised that they were the first ones. Kim reacts emotionally to the player's remark and asks him a question, actively gesturing. The protagonist notices in his mind that Kim seems to have forgotten about his recent failure with the kobolds. Some participants discuss how Lee, despite his level, took first place and received an award. The girl enthusiastically begins to justify the main character, explaining that he deserved his victory. The main character tries to calm the girl down, saying that perhaps they won't listen to them anyway. One of the group leaders suggests calming down and focusing on survival, addressing all players. Another leader agrees and inspires the participants, saying that they must keep moving for those who have already fallen. One of the participants seconded the proposal, calling on the others to pull together and continue the fight. Suddenly, the protagonist notices a change in the color of the torch and begins to worry about what is happening. A message about a penalty task appears, and the participants begin to worry about new challenges. The protagonist and his allies are alarmed by the sudden announcement of the start of a deadly mission. The system informs that players must select one candidate to carry out a deadly task. Players begin to panic, realizing that they have to make a choice in a limited time. One of the participants is thinking that he needs to choose someone before time runs out. Panic sets in among the participants as they realize that time is running out, and no decision has been made yet. One of the characters offers to vote for himself to avoid a deadly mission. The discussion escalates when another character expresses doubt that such a vote would help if everyone had to complete the task. Players begin to shout that time is running out, causing even more chaos. One of the participants points to the main character. All eyes turn to the protagonist, and it turns out that John has chosen Lee to carry out the deadly mission, and this is immediately displayed on the screen, which is noticed by all participants. The screen displays the name John, who has chosen the protagonist to carry out a deadly mission. The girl in the white coat notices the inscription above Lee's head, and is surprised to realize that he has been chosen for the mission. John justifies himself by saying that no one said the vote would be anonymous, trying to explain the cruelty of the situation. He apologizes to Lee, explaining that he has to choose, but Lee already seems resigned to the choice. Lee calmly notes that he expected this outcome given the atmosphere, but is still a little surprised by what is happening. John admits that despite everything, he does not want to die, revealing his inner struggle. Jay tries to come up with a plan where everyone votes for themselves and Lee chooses John. One of the characters remarks that this plan may not work, showing doubts about the effectiveness of the idea. Lee reflects on how trust among the participants has already been eroded, making the situation worse. Everyone starts voting for the main character, and his name gradually gains votes, which causes growing tension among the other participants, who realize that the choice has already been made. The protagonist notices that everyone is starting to vote for him to complete the deadly mission. He understands that the reason for this decision is his low level. The girl is outraged by the cruelty of the others, considering their actions inhumane, and calls for justice. Some players appear guilty, justifying themselves by saying that they did nothing wrong directly, even though the masks of their true intentions have already been removed. A red funnel begins to open up in front of the main character, causing him shock and fear for his life. He realizes that this is reality and is forced to face the inevitability of the task. The girl, watching what is happening, cannot hide her shock, calling his name. Lee, feeling the looks of guilt and relief on his face, realizes that he has no choice but to step forward and accept his fate. The protagonist realizes that he has no choice but to enter the funnel, and he takes a decisive step. Blue energy begins to surround his body, as a symbol that he has accepted the challenge and is ready for the test ahead. Jun Sung, despite his sadness, notes that even in this situation, they still have connections and friendships that they don't want to break. The red-haired guy responds skeptically by noting that everyone gets what they deserve, which causes misunderstanding in Jun Sung. Frustrated, he explains that the protagonist was only trying to take advantage of the situation, while his power was pulling the entire team forward. The girl objects, reminding them that thanks to Lee's abilities, the team was able to cope with the task. The heated red-haired man claims that Lee was simply lucky, and that he made the decisive blow when he himself was already knocked down. The girl insists that the main character saved him from certain death, to which he only reacts angrily, not agreeing. Kim wonders if Lee has really done anything important for the team. June expresses hope that Lee is as good as Healer Jay. The girl, remembering Lee's words, confidently says that everyone will be able to see with their own eyes what the main character is capable of. Confident of victory, she firmly believes that Lee will return safe and sound. The protagonist slowly walks through the empty camp, noticing that the kobolds look completely different than before, and the feeling of anxiety begins to intensify. He looks at a hologram that offers to take part in a dangerous task with a high chance of success, which promises a worthy reward. The protagonist remembers that he needs to take his mind off Kim's recent antics. He continues walking through the empty camp, unaware that 3 malevolent creatures are watching him from the darkness, lurking in the shadows and preparing to attack. 4 huge monsters with brightly glowing yellow eyes, grinning viciously, approach, exuding fury and threatening power. The leader of the monsters, with a terrifying red eye radiating fury, towers over the others. The leader of the monsters and his subordinates rush forward in a furious impulse, their eyes blazing with a bright fire, and the speed and power of the attack seeming unstoppable. Lee's hand clutches a strange fruit, from which a bright purple energy bursts out, tearing it apart and creating an atmosphere of mysterious magical power. The protagonist pours the purple liquid from the fruit onto his sword in preparation for the upcoming battle with the 12th level boss monster, realizing the seriousness of the confrontation. The hero fights 2 advancing monsters, confidently repelling their attacks with a sword covered in purple liquid. He dodges the monster's spear while delivering a precise blow with his sword. With a whirlwind of purple light, he instantly dispatches several opponents, piercing them with his sword. Taking a deep breath, he realizes that all the minor enemies have been defeated, leaving only one main enemy left. He gets ready to fight with determination as he watches the approaching boss monster of the Death Quest. In a sharp movement, attacks the monster, dealing a crushing blow and knocking it off its feet. With a serious expression on his face, he prepares for the next attack, not giving the monster a chance to strike back. Lee is surprised to see that his opponent has minimized the damage by stepping back at the moment of impact. The enemy shows off the skills expected of a Death Quest boss monster, surprising with speed and strength. The monster suddenly rushes forward with incredible speed, leaving behind only a whirlwind of dust. The main character attacks the monster with a series of quick strikes, causing the enemy's health to rapidly decrease. Suddenly, something strange happens. His sword suddenly gets stuck in the monster's body, causing surprise. The enemy freezes in place, as if unable to move, while he watches the scene in bewilderment. Lee looks at the frozen monster in bewilderment, not understanding what is happening. Suddenly, the monster moves and cuts Lee, dealing a serious blow. The scene shifts to the lobby where Kim promises to guide everyone to the end of the level. The man asks with disdain why one should pray for a person who is already doomed to die. The girl, without holding back her emotions, reproaches him for his lack of conscience, reminding him that even in such times one must maintain humanity. Kim sarcastically remarks that the chances of Lee returning unharmed are 0. The girl is outraged that Kim does not show sympathy, reproaching him for his lack of conscience even in such circumstances. She wonders if this is really a portal in front of her that could bring Lee back. A portal appears behind the group, drawing their attention and causing excitement among all participants. The protagonist emerges from the portal, surrounded by a bright blue glow. One of the participants watches the scene with a surprised smile, while the other character looks worried. The protagonist's face lights up, highlighting his determination as he finally emerges from the portal. A deep cut is visible on his clothes, which begins to heal with the help of magical energy. In the next shot, he looks straight ahead with a slight smile, confidently declaring that he is back. The kobold chieftain's eyes begin to turn red, signaling that his abilities are increasing. The protagonist realizes that the monster's abilities have activated when its eyes turn red. After being wounded, he sees that his health has dropped sharply to 32%, and he urgently needs to stop the bleeding. A monster with glowing red eyes rushes towards the hero, leaving him no time to catch his breath. The red-eyed monster delivers a powerful blow with its sword, attempting to break through Lee's defense and end the fight. Lee dodged the attack as the kobold leader launched a powerful blow straight into the tree behind him. The enemy's blow was so powerful that it punched a hole in the tree as if it were soft. The protagonist, realizing that his enemy is much stronger, suddenly comes to an important conclusion. Suddenly, Lee realizes that the sword is not the only weapon he can use. He comes to the conclusion that although a sword cannot penetrate a wall, a nail can damage it. He decides to try a new approach to combat, relying on his tactics and determination. As the monster lunges at him, he prepares to use his own momentum against him. Lee adds weight to his attack and delivers a powerful blow. The enemy flies into the air, struck by a precise and destructive attack. The kobold chieftain, with red glowing eyes, makes a powerful attack, clutching his blades in his hands. The protagonist, gathering all his will, pierces the enemy with his sword, directing all his strength into this decisive blow. After the attack, Lee continues to hold the weapon resolutely, without loosening his grip. The protagonist is happy that his plan worked, expressing relief and confidence. Someone's quick steps are heard on the floor, approaching the main character. The hero suddenly turns his head towards the sound, sensing someone approaching. The girl shouts the main character's name with joy and relief, rushing towards him with outstretched arms. Kim suddenly gets ahead of the girl, pushing Jay away before she can get close to Lee. The woman in the white coat flies back, as if someone had pushed her aside with a strong movement. Finding herself on the ground, she is stunned by what happened and is confused, trying to understand what just happened. The protagonist suddenly finds himself in the tight embrace of a man with red hair. Looking slightly confused by such a stormy meeting, Kim happily hugs Lee, expressing her confidence in his return. He states that even a deadly mission won't stop his brother, while Lee is clearly annoyed by the hug. The group of participants asks in disbelief if Lee actually carried out the deadly mission. Kim looks at the participants with concern, realizing that the situation is becoming more serious than he expected. One of the participants expresses joy that Lee is okay, but wonders why Lee's level has not changed after completing the task. Kim is also surprised that Lee hasn't leveled up despite completing the death quest. People around discuss the situation, recalling that Lee remains on the second level as before, hinting at a repeat of the strange situation. Lee thinks silently, thinking that he has become accustomed to such circumstances, but inside he still feels disappointed. In the past, Lee has been accused of cheating on an exam despite his best efforts, which causes discontent among those around him. There is talk now that Lee could have hidden and bided his time, as he did before, hinting at his past tricks. Lee is focused and determined to take the next step, despite the mistrust of others. The girl fiercely defends Lee, reminding everyone that he has already proven his strength by surviving a deadly mission. She confidently supports Lee, reproaching those around her for their ignorance of the situation. Kim loudly agrees with her words, indignant that no one threw a party in honor of Lee's return. Kim angrily attacks the other members, accusing them of being crazy, but they tell him that he looks crazy himself. In the end, Kim, although outraged, restrains his aggression, observing the reactions of others. Lee, smiling slightly, admits that he feels calmer after all these events. The protagonist realizes that he needs to do something impressive to convince everyone and help them survive in the tower. He addresses the assembled crowd, declaring that he wants to show them something. Lee shows off his sword, which increases his attack power, much to the surprise of those around him. One of the participants admires Lee for being able to preserve the poisonous apple, recognizing its exceptional nature. The participant emphasizes that the reward of such a rare item is much more useful for their survival than experience. Lee sarcastically repeats the words about survival, implying something more. He points out that everyone has forgotten an important detail. Lee reminded everyone that they almost drove him to death, showing his resentment and anger. Those present begin to realize the seriousness of the situation, and their reactions reflect the growing tension. One of the participants agrees with Lee, confirming that he is right in the current situation. One participant admits that he justified what happened as inevitable until he experienced it personally. He recalls with regret that voting for Lee felt like a silent expulsion because of his low level. The participant admits that they abandoned Lee in a life-threatening situation in order to survive themselves, and now sincerely regrets it. He apologizes to Lee, glad that he survived despite everything. Another participant says ironically that someone had to go anyway, and the situation was inevitable. This comment is outrageous. John harshly accuses the girl of not feeling guilty about what happened, to which she calmly replies that it is not for him to talk about it, since he was the one who voted first. Lee explains that he is not speaking out to discipline anyone, but to ensure that it does not happen again. He emphasizes that the tower tries to separate them and create tension. The tower provokes mistrust between them in order to sow discord. Its purpose is to start conflicts among the participants. Perhaps she takes pleasure in guiding them to their deaths. Some participants realize the seriousness of Lee's words and begin to think. Lee concludes that his return alive proves that they can counter the tower's intentions. One of the participants asks the main character about his plans for the future, to which he replies that he will continue to climb the tower for the sake of survival. The characters agree with this, deciding to move forward, rising higher and higher. The group believes that one day they will reach the end of the road. The main character hopes that they can get their lives back by asking others for support. Those present agree with him, recognizing the possibility. The girl enthusiastically declares that everyone needs to unite to achieve the goal. One of the characters, reflecting, calls the main character a generous person, admitting that he should not have been judged by his level. The heroes see a rabbit suddenly appear in front of them, who begins a conversation with regret. One of the participants is surprised by his return, and does not understand why he appeared again. Lee is concerned, asking if the rabbit is planning a survival test. The rabbit confirms his guess, praising Lee for his intelligence. The rabbit then explains that the next level will make the tasks more difficult, and only 15 participants will be able to pass the test. The characters are stunned by this news, realizing that something dangerous lies ahead. The contestants look up in surprise and alarm, as a message appears in front of them announcing the start of a new challenge called Battle Royale. The Game Master says that the current trial is just for fun, as it is a low level. This challenge involves 16 players and 16 of their doubles, for a total of 32 people. To win, you need to kill all the doubles, which is a condition for passing. The doppelgangers have identical stats and memories, making them difficult to distinguish. The main rule number 3 is that the player who killed the doppelganger will not receive any reward. If a player defeats another player, he receives bonuses in the form of attribute points and gold. The White Rabbit explains that the mission provides a great opportunity for all participants. He adds that for every 30 minutes that there are no kills, the game will change. A powerful beam of light appears, accompanied by a warning of disaster if the fighters do not act. The audience becomes nervous as they see the rabbit summoning an unknown force. A hand emerges from the portal, emitting powerful energy, causing panic and confusion among those around. A huge hand that frightens everyone who tries to run away from it. It turns out to be the hand of a creature with red eyes and huge tusks. Lee, along with his comrades, rushes forward, trying to protect the others. His face is tense, and he realizes that the monster expects them to fight. All three take cover on the ground, trying to hide from the monster, clinging to each other. The red-eyed monster continues to approach, showing its power and threatening everyone around. The main character screams in panic that this is a real disaster. Another character, lying on the floor, exclaims in shock that he passed the first floor easily, but cannot cope with this situation. The girl desperately screams that she doesn't want to die and calls for help. The protagonist notes that the people around him are in a panic. A huge creature appears, swinging its fist, preparing to attack. One of the characters falls into the unknown with a scream, finding himself in front of the enemy. Lee rescues his companion, carrying him away from the battlefield while chaos continues in the background. The protagonist is alarmed that the second floor mission has not yet begun, but dangerous events are already happening. The rabbit lying on the ground appears to be very scared and is shaking with fear. The protagonist ponders that perhaps the rabbit is trying to convince everyone of the seriousness of the mission. He realizes that this may just be a show, since they were not actually hurt. The characters are thrown into the air, apparently under the impact of a powerful blow. One of the heroes fires an arrow with great force, aiming it at the enemy. A man in a leopard shirt throws a huge rock with force, trying to deal a crushing blow. The protagonist realizes that the situation is much more serious than it seemed. And this is not just a show, they are really going to be killed. One of the participants shouts that there is no more mana left, and although there are no deaths yet, it is only a matter of time. A huge green enemy hand comes crashing down. One of the characters screams, "Again!" Lee orders a retreat, realizing that the situation is becoming increasingly dangerous. He decides that there is no time to think, and if the enemy is not stopped, they will all die. So he gathers his strength by using Necrotic Sword and Thorn Strike to counter the enemy. Suddenly, the enemy's huge fist rushes forward, and the protagonist prepares for the final blow using his sword. He swings his sword furiously, shouting as if he is about to deliver the finishing blow. And he uses a powerful technique called Thorn Strike, directing the sword's energy into a powerful vortex that rapidly grows in front of him. The protagonist, with a sword, directs powerful energy upward in an attack, surrounded by his comrades who are also preparing for battle. The characters' faces show surprise and fear as they watch what is happening, not understanding what will happen next. Lee is surprised that he was able to defeat the huge monster with relative ease, not expecting such an outcome from his attack. People around are rejoicing and shouting hooray, celebrating the victory and achievement in the process of the battle. The protagonist looks at his sword, a little surprised, hearing the approving cries of his comrades. The hero notices changes in what is happening, realizing that something has changed in the conditions of their mission or combat situation. Lee begins to lose strength and faint, feeling extremely dizzy and weak, leading him to a semi-conscious state. He finally loses consciousness. The outlines of his comrades, who are concerned about his condition, begin to blur before the protagonist's eyes. Suddenly, Lee regains consciousness. After regaining consciousness, he lies on the floor, and his friends immediately begin asking about his well-being. One of the comrades is amazed at how modestly the main character dealt with such a powerful monster, emphasizing that his strength knows no bounds. The hero begins to come to his senses and tries to understand what happened after the battle, asking about what happened with the disaster. Kumkum appears and explains that the monster was sent back, confirming that it was just a demonstration. The rabbit is bored that the game was not exciting enough, but notes that despite this, the atmosphere remained warm. The two players are horrified to realize that someone is supposed to die every 30 minutes, creating a tense atmosphere. Lee and his comrades are left in confusion, wondering who the next victim might be. The rabbit instills fear, hinting that the killer may be someone from the player's circle. The group of people are stunned and frightened, realizing the seriousness of what is happening. The rabbit announces that his work for the day is finished, saying goodbye to the participants of the game. Lee didn't expect such straightforwardness from the rabbit, which puzzles him greatly. The players realize that if they don't find the doppelganger, they'll have to kill one of their own, and they begin to think about possible solutions. One of the players attracts the attention of the group by trying to voice his plan of action. Lee states that he has a way to deal with the situation, showing his determination and confidence. He begins to realize that the situation may be worse than it seems. In a moment of intense discussion, the hero declares that he alone will carry out the plan, expressing confidence in his actions despite the doubts of others. The group's reaction is one of surprise when the hero suggests an unexpected plan of action. The hero gives specific instructions, explaining that everyone must gather at the highest point of the second floor. He warns that anyone who tries to act without his knowledge may be considered a double and eliminated. One of the allies expresses skepticism about the protagonist's strategy, questioning whether this is his plan of action. A woman in the group laughs and tries to question the hero's authority, although she acknowledges his abilities. The hero remains silent, collecting his thoughts, and then reminds everyone of Kumkum's warning, emphasizing the importance of following the proposed plan. Kumkum reminds everyone that killing the doppelganger will not give them anything, but killing the player will give stat points and gold. Amidst the bloody conflict, the fighting characters understand that their task is to kill the doubles, but the hero realizes that the tower is clearly pushing them to kill each other. Lee is adamant that he will no longer follow the tower's rules, believing that another course of action would be more correct and effective. The girl asks irritably where exactly they should meet, to which the man next to her looks thoughtful, supporting the proposal under discussion. The man agrees with the proposal, raising his hand in approval, and adds that this will help them minimize losses. The two characters' gazes meet, and one of them asks if his interlocutor will be able to recognize the double among the group. A confident smile appears on the man's face, and he confidently replies that, of course, he can do it. The tall guy in the leopard print shirt looks disgruntled, musing out loud about how they're all gathered at the highest point and doing nothing. The guy looks around warily, perhaps hearing some sounds or feeling that someone is watching him, keeping everything under control. The tension is noticeable on the guy's face. He clenches his fist, quietly saying the name Su Yan, as if he has a premonition of trouble or something wrong. The protagonist smiles and notes with slight irony that not many creatures of that size could be hiding behind the tree, implying that he has already guessed who is there. The man standing behind the tree pretends not to recognize the protagonist, asking with feigned surprise who it is in front of him, but at the same time addressing him as Brother Lee. The protagonist, with determination, delivers a powerful blow with his sword, cutting his double in half. He raises his sword with a swing, preparing for the decisive blow. His face is tense and serious as he delivers the blow, showing his determination. The back of the protagonist, who stands in front of the interface, thinking about what happened. He expresses relief that he was able to recognize the doubles, although internally he doubted his abilities. A notification appears on the screen informing you that the hero has received the absolute sense ability. Next, he listens to his surroundings, hearing people muttering. The hero sees the energy surrounding him, concentrating on his feeling. He notices that the enemy is 500 meters away, but it feels like he is very close. Suddenly, the protagonist smells an unpleasant odor that makes him hold his breath. First, a double is shown, looking frightening, baring his teeth and looking at the main character with a dark grin, as if preparing to attack. The next scene reveals that the doppelganger has been killed, and the screen shows updated information about the number of remaining players and doppelgangers. The protagonist realizes that there was a double in front of him, and his thoughts show that the enemy tried to hide his true nature until the last moment. Against the backdrop of nature, the protagonist reflects that his plan worked, and the main thing is that everyone follows his instructions. However, the next panel reports updated data, now an equal number of players and doubles, 15 to 15, and the requirement to make a new kill in 30 minutes appears again. The protagonist's eyes widen in surprise. He cannot believe that one of the players was killed. He thinks that perhaps the doppelganger has begun to act, or it is one of the players, perhaps even one of his allies. Lee runs determinedly, clutching his sword, in search of the killer, trying to find him as quickly as possible. Then he climbs the tree with lightning speed, showing off his strength and speed as he heads towards his target. The protagonist reflects on the fact that while he was fighting one double, another player was killed, and he decides that he must find the killer. The hero notices that someone is ahead and quickly moves towards the target from the tree. He sees a figure with a sword, immersed in a glow, which causes his immediate reaction. Then he realizes that he has found the one he was looking for, and continues his pursuit. The protagonist takes quick and decisive actions, pursuing his goal among the trees of the forest. The red-haired character suddenly finds himself in the center of attention, surprised by what is happening around him. But suddenly, an attack occurs on this character, and he is defeated by a swift blow. Lee is relieved to realize that it was not his double, but a completely unexpected opponent. The hero stands and looks at his fallen ally, expressing regret that this man has become a victim in their world. He leans towards the body, noticing something unusual that worries him. Lee examines the body of his defeated opponent, and notices that the weapon was a sword, but the wound was clearly caused by something else. He realizes that the wound on the body is not from the sword that the murdered man had, which suggests that the real killer is still around. Then he looks into the distance and sees a human figure glowing on the horizon. The bow is already drawn and the arrow is ready to be fired. The sniper at the other end prepares to fire his bow, aiming intently at the protagonist, creating a tense atmosphere. The main character hides behind a tree and realizes that there is another enemy somewhere nearby. He begins to doubt and asks who is standing in front of him, believing that it might be a player and not a double. Suddenly, the hero realizes that someone has been wounded by an arrow, and this raises suspicions about a doppelganger attack. Lee sees his ally with his bow drawn, who asks if everything is all right, but turns suspiciously towards Lee, considering him a possible enemy. The archer is unsure whether the person in front of him is the real person or a double, and asks the protagonist to keep his distance, as he cannot tell them apart. The protagonist calmly replies that he just killed the double, and wonders if this will convince his allies of his honesty. The guy in the sports uniform is breathing heavily, straining after the fight, leaning slightly on his knee, as if trying to catch his breath. His strength leaves him, and he begins to fall to his knees, despite his attempts to stay on his feet. The distance between the two characters is great, and one of them furiously shouts the name of his comrade, Kim Jun-sung, rushing towards him with the obvious intention of helping. The companion with the magical gift of light extends her hand, preparing to use her healing power. She expresses her intention to help Kim Jun-sung, believing that he needs healing. The one standing before her warns her to stay away, as the enemies they are about to fight are doppelgangers. The reaction to the information about the doubles causes shock and anxiety, which is noticeable on the faces of the characters, including the one who was in close proximity to the battle. Against this background, the figure of one of the participants turns into something more sinister. His face changes, his eyes glow, as if he is succumbing to the dark force that has completely engulfed him. The attackers rush towards their target, quickly closing the distance to their opponents, ready to attack, with the tension building as each one aims for their own target in the fight. The swords of the two opponents collide with great force, accompanied by bright flashes. Then, next to them, another participant in the battle quickly intervenes, promising to take on one of the enemies, preparing for battle. The character ponders intensely over why the doubles act so confidently in front of him, especially the girl's double. He realizes that she is the one who knows his powers best, which makes him think about his next steps. The healer's double looks ready to attack, while the other opponent, on the contrary, is already rushing into battle with a sword. A powerful blow is delivered with the sword, causing destruction on the ground. The character suddenly finds himself in the air, his body rapidly turning over. The scene heats up as the protagonist once again prepares for another fight with the enemy, which increases the tension of the situation. The character notices an arrow flying in his direction at unexpected speed. The arrow hits the surface, leaving a trail of blood. A drop of blood runs down his face, indicating a small wound. The character looks tired and slightly displeased, realizing the current situation. The character raises his sword with a smug smile, confidently declaring that his actions will lead to victory, clearly enjoying his moment. In front of him stand two men with swords, their eyes glowing an ominous red light, emphasizing that they are under control. One of these characters takes a powerful blow, sending him flying backwards with a scream and a shocked expression on his face. The character controlling them smiles and recalls that he always believed that he would lead his enemies to defeat with a carefully thought-out plan, comparing his actions to a game of chess. A moment later, he realizes his excessive cruelty, wipes the blood from his hand, and admits with a slight smile that he got a little carried away, as if it were an accident. Meanwhile, another character reflects on what happened, wondering if it was a betrayal or something worse, as sadness and disappointment are reflected on his face. The archer mockingly wonders if his actions were motivated by anger, his face contorted into an evil grin, as if he had lost all control of himself. His opponent, with cold determination and a slight smile, says that he has always waited for his true nature to be revealed. But even in this, he underestimated the madness of his opponent. 3 characters are surrounded in an open area, and an archer suspiciously asks if their opponent knew he would be stabbed in the back. Lee, with shining eyes and a dark smile, states that he can see the statuses of other players, emphasizing that the archer's stats have increased significantly. An archer in charge of his subordinates stands next to 2 characters, whose faces are covered in shadow, and whose eyes glow red. He admits that each time his opponent becomes more interesting and wonders if he is God's favorite. The main character, clearly perplexed, asks why this is happening, and whether his opponent really needs gold and status so much that he is willing to kill for it. Amidst the tense atmosphere, he uses his powers, and his hand begins to glow with blue energy, emphasizing the seriousness of his intentions. The vision reveals a world where murder is not only not punished, but encouraged. The archer talks about this world with an expression of pleasure and audacity. Then, the question of why not kill suddenly bursts out of the opponent's mouth, accompanied by an aggressive gesture aimed at using force against his enemies. The character recalls the past, believing that his opponent had no choice but to hide his true identity. The archer fires an arrow, aiming at the protagonist, and his attack becomes an unexpected turn in the battle, threatening to break through the defense and hit the target. The main character deftly dodges the fired arrow, demonstrating his speed and skill in combat. The character, realizing the truth, notices that the archer had been pretending all this time, hiding his true nature. The character falls down, simultaneously attacking 3 of his opponents with great speed, demonstrating his superiority and strength. All 3 opponents are drawn into the fight, and one of them attacks with a powerful slashing motion, creating a bright light effect. The protagonist performs a quick turn to avoid the enemy's attack, while still maintaining control of the situation. Arrows fly after him, which he deflects with incredible speed and dexterity, demonstrating his skill. The next arrow flies towards him quickly, and he realizes that the follow-up shot was made for the finishing blow. He expertly dodges the arrow, moving at incredible speed, allowing him to avoid the fatal blow. The guy deftly dodges the arrow, sliding through the air. Landing in a fighting stance, he notices an arrow hitting the tree behind him. Lee confidently states that the archer did not show all of his skills. In front of Lee, 2 fighters slowly rise up, surrounded by an ominous green aura. The man opposite, already ready for battle, stands confidently with a blade in his hand. The archer managed to convince the doppelgangers to fight on his side, a fact that underlines the seriousness of the situation. The opponents discuss how they need to be well organized to achieve their goal, and note their opponent's persistence. The archer begins to spin the arrow in his hands, preparing for the next maneuver. He coldly warns that the more the protagonist resists, the more painful the fight will be for him. He smirks as he considers his actions and takes out his bow, already preparing his next move. The archer fires 3 arrows at once, while the remaining enemies try to attack from behind, trying to catch Lee off guard. Lee's ultimate sense activates, allowing him to sense danger before it reaches him. Using his unique skill, the protagonist gathers strength for an attack, preparing for a counterattack. Suddenly, the hero finds himself surrounded by several arrows fired by an archer. Lee instantly rushes forward, quickly attacking one of the doppelgangers. The pink-eyed healer prepares to release a powerful blast of energy. The surprise attack seems to catch her off guard, and she doesn't have time to complete the spell. Lee moves forward, leaving behind his fallen enemies, and prepares for the next step in the fight. The archer sweats profusely, fearing his opponent and realizing the seriousness of the situation. His legs give way, and he falls to his knees in surrender, completely broken. He begs the protagonist to spare him, screaming with pleading and panic in his voice. Giving in to fear, the archer admits his mistake, saying that he crossed the line in trying to stop the protagonist. However, in a desperate attempt to resist, the archer attacks again in a final dash. The protagonist responds to this attack with a decisive counterattack, seizing the initiative. The archer, bleeding, screams in pain as he falls to the ground. A drop of blood falls from the sword, symbolizing the victory of the protagonist over the enemy. The system informs the hero that he has opened the path of the flesh after committing a murder, offering him a new challenge. The protagonist, surprised by what is happening, sees red energy wrapping around him, offering bonuses for accepting the challenge. The hologram states that if Lee becomes a killer, he will receive enormous benefits. The protagonist tries to protect himself from the force surrounding him, feeling the pressure. A creature appears from bright red swirls, capturing the space around. A figure appears before him, the embodiment of a challenge, ready to offer a deal. Lee is shocked by the sudden appearance of this mysterious entity. He is shown what bonuses he will receive by accepting the challenge, including legendary skills and significant stat increases. The protagonist recalls how he destroyed the doubles without hesitation, realizing that they were not real people. He also reflects on how his enemies grow stronger with every step he takes, as some of them have chosen the path of the killer. Next, he sees notifications in front of him about the possibility of becoming a killer and receiving various bonuses if he takes this path. Despite the tempting offers, Lee resolutely refuses to become a crazy psychopath, throwing the offer away. The next moment, he is surrounded by a crowd of people, and among them, a man stands out who happily greets Lee. Kim asks with admiration why Lee was absent for so long, expressing concern for his well-being. Lee, doubting his condition, wonders if he himself is the same crazy killer that appears within him. He then thanks those around him for their trust, acknowledging that his offer was difficult to accept, but they still decided to trust him. One of the crowd members panics and asks what to do next and how to distinguish enemies from allies. Lee claims their actions were in accordance with his instructions and urges everyone to follow his instructions in the future. The main character's double appears and walks with a confident gait. The protagonist looks at his double, realizing that there is a serious fight ahead. He sees his double, realizing that a collision is inevitable. Surprised observers notice the presence of two identical Lees and cannot determine which one is the real one. Two identical Lees stand opposite each other, creating a tense atmosphere among those around them. The crowd froze, realizing that the denouement could come at any moment, and fate depended on who would emerge victorious. The protagonist is internally preparing for the fight, knowing that the problem has already begun and cannot be avoided. He recalls that his carefully thought-out plan fell apart because the archer suddenly turned out to be a psychopath and ruined all the plans. Now it's a game between Lee and his double, where the stakes have been raised to the limit. The observers ask the protagonist to sort out the situation, as they cannot determine which of Lee is the real one. Lee and his double stand opposite each other, and one of them wonders who these dead doubles are. The protagonist realizes that proof of the existence of doubles confirms his status as a player. He and his doppelganger report that several players, including Kim Jun-sung and others, have been caught. A group of people watching the situation look extremely surprised and shocked by what is happening. Lee is confused and wonders why things turned out this way. The double confidently asks everyone to think carefully about what is happening. He explains that he developed a trusting relationship with Kim and Jae during the first mission, and that it was their doubles that he killed first. The double asks how likely it is that what happened. Lee notices that the double has taken the initiative, which surprises him. One of the characters suggests that Lee is trying to use the situation to his advantage, which becomes obvious to some observers. The main character's double makes a statement when he says that Kim Jun-sung is a double and killed the real one himself. When recalling Kim Jun-sung, the hero describes him as a high-level member of their zone and a leader who supported them during difficult times. The girl claims that it is impossible to imagine Kim Jun-sung's death, even if the real Lee is in front of them. The double doubts whether the killer can be trusted and how true his words are. While the doppelganger claims not to know how Kim Jun-sung actually died, he notes that it is too late to change anything. The double mockingly accuses the protagonist of murder, pointing at him and calling him a double. The protagonist is struck by the realization of the situation, which is expressed in his tense and puzzled look. The woman claims that everything is obvious and calls on the others to destroy the double in order to deal with the remaining threats. The man in the leopard print insists that one cannot judge by one side's words alone and suggests caution. The characters notice that there is no more time for caution, as there are only a few minutes left before the disaster. The protagonist calmly admits that he killed Kim Jun-sung, which shocks those around him. He walks next to his double, and the double asks him if he gives up. Lee suddenly reaches for his weapon, hinting that there is a secret that even his double knows. With fury, he declares that the archer has turned out to be a traitor, decisively attacking him. Kim Jun-sung is fatally wounded, leaving all witnesses in shock. The girl screams his name in panic, not believing in his death. The double demands an answer to the question of why his opponent runs away despite their fight. He realizes that the situation is more complicated than it seemed, and begins to doubt what is happening. One of the fighters realizes that if the double is a traitor, then the real Lee must be the killer. Suspicions are heightened when another member confirms his hunch that the real Lee killed Kim Jun-sung, changing the perception of what is happening. John recalls that it was this man who brought everyone together, and they believed that the odds were in their favor. Reflecting on the situation, he remembers that if a doppelganger kills a player, they cannot attack without risking being discovered. He then muses that if Lee can really see doppelgangers, then killing the doppelganger will prove that he is the real thing. At this moment, the main character is surprised and wonders if the archer was just killing others. He reflects that Kim Jun-sung was a devil in the guise of an angel, hiding his true identity. One of the group members is in a panic and cannot understand how all this happened. Shocked by what is happening, she remembers how the archer saved her on the last mission. The group member cannot forgive the insult inflicted on Kim Jun-sung, harboring a deep grudge against it. Mad with rage, she attacks with a scream, not ready to forgive what happened. Suddenly, the girl received a sharp blow and it caught her by surprise. She feels a sharp pain from the arrow that hit her back and turns around in confusion, trying to understand who attacked her. A look of confusion appears in her eyes when she sees the man she thought was her ally, Kim Jun-sung. Lee is outraged that Jun-sung still seems to be full of energy and tries to understand how he managed to survive. Jun-sung screams how he missed these emotions and faces, clearly enjoying the chaos that is happening. Unexpectedly, he is killed by An-se-chan, after which it turns out that it is not Kim Jun-sung, but his double, who fought to the last. One of the other members apologizes to Lee, admitting that he doubted his abilities and now doesn't know what to do next. A discussion begins among the survivors about whether Jun-sung was actually killed or if it was his doppelganger, leading to panic. People, completely confused, begin to follow Lee, relying on his leadership, not knowing how else to act in such a difficult situation. Lee becomes aware of the strange and new feeling he is beginning to feel for the first time, and ponders its meaning as he moves on. He states with a serious expression that he will now voice the last proposal. The double swings his sword in a jump, preparing to attack, saying that since it happened this way, there is no choice. A powerful attack occurs and the characters clash in a furious fight. Lee encourages his allies to spend all their gold and boost all stats to increase their chances against the doppelgangers. The team combines their forces and increases their characteristics, endurance, agility, and strength, which gives them a decisive advantage over their opponents. The group of characters discuss that the doppelgangers began copying their stats from the second floor, and this became a key factor in the battle. Another character comes to the conclusion that if they improve the group's stats, they will be able to complete the mission without losses. An-se-chan angrily states that if it weren't for Kim Jun-sung, everyone could have survived. The character sits on the ground, covering his face with his hand, obviously upset. The protagonist silently expresses regret that he was unable to prevent casualties. Sitting on the steps, the protagonist foresees that the upcoming battle will be even more brutal than the previous ones. He wonders why he was the one given this special ability, trying to find the reason for his situation. The protagonist clenches his fist and reflects on the fact that, despite all the difficulties, he has people who believe in him. An-se-chan thanks the protagonist for surviving thanks to his advice. The characters discuss how, despite the limitations of the second level, the protagonist was able to do more than the others, probably due to some ability. An-se-chan apologizes to the protagonist for doubting him and ignoring him. He bows deeply. Lee responds to the apology by stopping An-se-chan, saying that there is no need to go that far. The other characters laugh and discuss their lack of foresight. Kim jokes that he should have just sat on Lee's neck like he did before. An-se-chan lowered his head doubtfully and said that perhaps now is not the best time to talk like this. However, he expresses hope that in the future, Lee will be able to lead their team to victory. Lee looks up in surprise, listening carefully to An-se-chan's words. After a moment's thought, a slight smile appears on his face and he agrees, confirming his readiness for this role. The team notices that out of all the doppelgangers, only one remains, and the group members are puzzled that they missed him. At this point, one of the participants wonders where the last opponent disappeared to. Lee takes a slow step forward, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the forest. He walks cautiously through the forest, sensing the presence of the last double, who is hiding among the bushes. Lee delivers a decisive blow with his sword, destroying the last enemy. Participants gathered in the center of the hall begin to count the gold earned for completing the task. The characters rejoice in receiving gold, and each of them voices their reward, demonstrating their joy. Kim is ostentatiously proud of his success, showing off his muscles and claiming to have received 2,000 gold pieces. The protagonist smiles, noting that thanks to his advice, everyone was able to receive their well-deserved rewards, while he himself receives a significantly larger sum of 12,500 gold. The protagonist presses a holographic panel, intending to purchase an upgrade. A notification appears about purchasing a level 3 sword skill, costing 5,000 gold. The girl looks at the screen in surprise, having received 1,200 gold from Lee. Confused, she asks Lee why he gave her the gold, to which he calmly replies that she deserved it. One of the team members, with optimism and enthusiasm, motivates the others to continue fighting for survival. Lee thanks the girl, admitting that their current situation is possible only thanks to her. Determined to become stronger, she is full of determination and confidence in her abilities. Hoyun also hands over 200 gold to his ally, warning him against becoming overly complacent. Remembering his motives, Hoyun reflects that the stronger he becomes, the more benefit it will bring him in the future. Kim shows extreme submissiveness and admiration towards Lee, ready to fulfill his every wish. The main character, preparing for battle, decides to test his updated skill. On the 3rd floor, a task awaits the players, and they prepare to complete it. Participants realize that this will be the first time they will meet players from other regions. Their group is tasked with attacking and capturing the castle, taking control of the altar. The hero receives a temporary item, a return crystal, which can only be used at this level. He looks at the crystal, surprised to realize its meaning. The man expresses doubts about the need to kill other players, while the girl carefully examines the strange crystal in her hands. Lee continues to study the crystal, realizing its importance to the current mission. He calls out to Kim enthusiastically, keeping him motivated and encouraging him before the battle. The protagonist clarifies whether his ally is really ready to fulfill any of his wishes, armed with a new weapon. The ally reacts to this statement in stunned silence, not knowing how to respond. Kim climbs a high mountain, showing her determination. The hero continues to climb with effort, overcoming difficult slopes. He expresses confusion and irritation, wondering why the protagonist couldn't just explain it with words. As he continues to think, he realizes that even if he dies here, the crystal will return him to the starting point of the level. Approaching the huge gates of the castle, he confidently prepares for the next step. He decides to use force to break through, intending to destroy the gate. A shot on goal results in a reduction in its integrity, reflecting his powerful onslaught. Kim triumphantly breaks through the castle gates, which swing open before him. Suddenly, the castle gates are restored, causing him surprise. There are 2 guards standing on the castle wall, watching what is happening. In the center of the castle there is an altar, around which about 10 people have gathered. The protagonist warns his ally not to kill anyone, so as not to reveal the intentions of using the return crystal. The ally reflects that, despite the hero's request, everyone here looks scared at the mere sight of him. In a fit of rage, he decides to teach his opponents a lesson by attacking with full force. However, a sudden blow hits him, causing him to recoil and stagger. His face contorts in pain as the magic bullet hits him, leaving him completely confused. The character, holding his wound, suffers from pain after being hit by a magic bullet. He looks at those standing on the altar in bewilderment, trying to understand what is happening. The focus is on a woman with a gun, who puzzles him. The protagonist is shocked when he realizes that someone is actually using a gun. The victim confirms that he was hit by a magic bullet, complaining of severe pain. Lee reflects that it is impossible to obtain the gun at this stage, which further increases his surprise. He realizes that even their most experienced ally, despite being a soldier, does not have a firearm with him. A scene from the past appears before Lee's eyes, where he was once offered the title of unrivaled killer. He suggests that the girl with the gun most likely chose the privileges of this title and became an unrivaled killer, which is why she has a gun. The girl calms the main character, telling him not to worry. She confidently promises to cover him, showing her readiness to fight. The other team members, one after another, enthusiastically express their willingness to support them. The man stretches forward with effort and pain, overcoming physical suffering. A girl with a cold expression sits on a man, emphasizing his subordinate position and her power over him in this mysterious environment. A group of people in dark clothes stand, depressed and tense. The protagonist remembers how he received the skill Impeccable Sense on the 2nd floor. He, using his ability of impeccable intuition, observes the guards standing on the walls of the fortress, preparing for further action. One of the heroes boldly calls out to the guards on the wall, challenging them to another confrontation. The protagonist and his allies discuss how their opponents can only guess at the purpose of the return crystal. Guards on the castle walls load their bows in preparation for an attack. One of the allies notices the sudden shelling with surprise. Lee quickly rises into the air, dodging the arrows. Kim reacts with fear when he is used as a stepping stone, pushing off his shoulder with his foot to jump. Lee easily jumps over the massive gates of the fortress, amazing everyone with his agility. He rushes down with a menacing expression on his face, preparing to attack the enemy below. Several enemies are hit before they even realize what's happening. The hero's allies are pleased that their opponents were unprepared for his powerful attack, and they enthusiastically prepare to end the battle. Kim urges everyone to take advantage of the opportunity and attack the castle, moving forward with determination. He uses his rock fist skill, preparing to deliver a powerful blow. Suddenly, a powerful energy attacks him, confusing and causing pain. The girl tries to heal him while he groans in agony. The main character watches what is happening on the castle walls with bewilderment. The enemy ironically remarks that his misplaced mercy will lead to their defeat. A group of opponents appears at the castle gates, ready for the final battle. One of the opponents warns that she will show no mercy. The protagonist realizes that he really is facing an unrivaled killer. The girl stands confidently on the defeated man, expressing her power and control over him. She points a gun with a magical charge at the enemy, demonstrating her power. Lee, with a tense expression, receives the magic bullet, using all his strength to withstand the attack. Exhausted, he leans against the wall with his sword by his side, realizing his losses. He takes a potion to restore his strength and continue the fight. He then watches carefully as the potion begins to restore his life energy. The girl's magical power gradually dries up with each shot. She prepares to attack with a pistol, planning her next move. Lee realizes that she still has 13 magic bullets left and prepares to fight. A group of characters led by an aggressively minded man begins an attack, rushing towards the enemy. The hero receives a magical bullet to the chest, causing a sudden burst of bright light. The character wonders how they will be able to get to the altar under constant fire from magical bullets. In response to this, Lee notes that the shooter will not be able to endlessly destroy everyone with his shots. The character decides to expose himself to one bullet in order to test his defenses. After being hit by a bullet, Isa will activate her ability to revive the injured character. A girl with a green magical aura heals her allies. The character in black orders everyone to move forward. Frightened by the situation, her subordinates go into battle. The main character decides that everything will be decided now and calls on everyone to hurry. One of the opponents tries to attack the main character with a sword. Lee quickly dodges and strikes his opponent. Suddenly, a bullet appears in front of his face, approaching at great speed. Junho rushes to protect Lee and manages to block the magic bullet. The enemy concentrated their forces on a new attack, seeking to suppress Lee and his allies. The girl, noticing that her bullet was blocked, does not hide her surprise. One of Lee's allies is wounded and urges him to move forward. The protagonist is furious at his desperate situation, and his eyes show determination. Despite his efforts, many of his allies fell in battle. The girl continues to shoot enemies in cold blood, demonstrating complete calm. The character increases his sword proficiency to level 3, preparing to attack. With a powerful swing, he cuts through opponents surrounded by blue light. In a bright flash of magical energy, Lee and Soyeon collide, creating a powerful strike in the center of the arena. Kim clenches his fist, which begins to become covered with a stone crust, causing surprise among those around him. He, with a wild grin and a determined look, charges forward with great force. His powerful slam on the ground causes a shockwave, sending opponents flying and proving his overwhelming power. The girl with the weapon notices the attacker's power and is surprised to realize his strength despite being level 2. The protagonist replies that her rapid leveling up to level 13 also raises questions. He stands on an altar opposite an opponent who points a gun at him, tasked with getting rid of a player from the other team. At this point, he realizes that it will take at least 3 people to capture the altar. The girl fires a pistol, but Lee manages to dodge, avoiding the flying bullet. The girl aims a pistol at him, but the hero quickly reacts, pointing his sword at her shot. Lee attacks her with his sword, while she quickly defends herself by raising her gun to block the blow. The hero deftly dodges her bullets, moving at incredible speed. The girl jumps up, trying to aim and shoot. She fires decisively, full of confidence in her action, in order to catch up with the enemy. Lee dodges sharply, preparing for a counterattack, analyzing her every move. Returning to the past, Lee talks about Junho, talking about his table tennis skills. He was a true master, and this helps him in precise movements in battle. Lee recalls the moment his friend heroically protected him from an attack. He realizes that Junho gave him an idea on how to dodge attacks. Lee deftly dodges the bullet using his acquired skills, demonstrating his improved reflexes and speed. This maneuver surprises the girl, who did not expect such dexterity and skill from her opponent. She changes her grip on the gun and raises it up, her movements quick and precise, indicating combat experience. The character states that they have dealt with all the enemies, urging Lee to finish it off before the enemies respawn. The girl discovers that the crystals bring players back to life, but Lee coldly informs her that this knowledge will no longer help. Lee decides to take a risk and finish the fight with her, focusing all his power on the next attack. The girl uses the accumulated gold to improve her characteristics, increasing the level of her shooting skill to the 4th. With fury on his face, Lee prepares for the final blow, aware of the tension of the moment. The girl fires a double charge of magic bullets, showing her intention to end this once and for all. The protagonist receives a powerful blow and screams in pain, trying to maintain balance. The hero's partners look at his condition, reacting with fear to his injuries. He watches Kim with restraint as he frowns and mockingly asks why he made such a serious face. Lee announces that their team has won despite his injuries. He notes that he still managed to pierce the girl with his sword, despite her efforts to defend herself. With a sly smile, the girl promises to remember Lee Ho-yan's name and take revenge on him. The protagonist notes with relief that, thanks to their last efforts, their team captured the altar and won. Then he suddenly reacts to someone's shout. When he is told to pay attention to what is happening, his gaze becomes wary. The squad they were fighting against appears from the mysterious portal, causing alarm among the hero's team. The evil monster from the portal growls and prepares to attack this squad. The characters watch in horror as disaster looms, ready to attack them. The girl realizes that they must help those in danger, and suggests this to her comrades. The monster, screaming with rage, prepares to attack. Isol understands the seriousness of what is happening, and the character standing next to her is stunned. Two men watch the situation, shocked and disturbed by what they see. Lee, with a tense and serious expression on his face, with beads of sweat on his face, looks forward, realizing the complexity of the situation. It is reported that only one player survived in Region C1427 and that squads have been reorganized. The protagonist is perplexed by the fact that the only survivor could be extremely dangerous. All the heroes stand warily in front of the new member of their group. The girl in black returns, bloodied, determined to join the new squad to continue the fight. The girl, covered in blood and with an expression of disgust on her face, calls what happened an abomination. The main character, with anxiety on his face, speaks about his insecurity and anxiety in his soul. The team stands in a destroyed city square, surveying the devastated area around them. The girl in the group realizes that they are on the 4th floor, in an abandoned city. A message appears on the screen that in 6 hours the city will be in disaster, and the task is to kill all the monsters. Additionally, it is indicated that the portal will appear randomly as the task is completed. It is further reported that a total of 20 portals will be available. The information on the screen states that only the person who found the portal will be able to use it. The team members become animated as they discuss the upcoming monster hunt and their chances of success. One of the team members, with enthusiasm and a smile, states that their goal is to quickly increase their levels. The characters discuss opening individual portals and the possibility of limiting the number of monsters that can appear in these portals. A message appears about the availability of 20 portals. The hero thinks that this may be a trick of the tower, since there are more portals than participants. One of the participants says that it would be logical to head to the portal as soon as it opens. They decide to promise each other that as soon as the portal opens, they will immediately enter it. Lee expresses relief that they were finally able to communicate and feel like a team. But the hero also notices that there is one problem and is clearly concerned about it while the others discuss the plan. A character appears who declares that she does not intend to agree to the proposed conditions, her expression showing discontent and irritation. This character leaves, stating that she will not allow others to boss her around and threatening to do something unpleasant. Lee, looking at the situation, jokingly suggests trying to deal with this character quietly, clearly meaning radical measures. Kim is furious and says that if she didn't have a gun, he would have finished her off. He flies back from a powerful blow from the girl in black. Sun So-yeon delivers a powerful punch, sending the opponent back and causing them to bleed. Several other characters watch the scene, their faces expressing shock and bewilderment. The girl stands over her defeated opponent and sarcastically asks if he is tired of living, showing her complete dominance in the fight. Hoen reminds the girl that she is now part of their squad, suggesting that she stop causing conflicts. The girl and the guy meet again. He asks with a cold expression on his face if she has anything to tell him. The main character reacts sharply to some unexpected action of the girl. His face expresses bewilderment. A message appears stating that a master assassin has chosen him as the primary target. Lee realizes that the killer's attention is now focused on him, and he is about to become his target. Shock and fear are reflected on the face of the protagonist. He realizes that a serious test awaits him, and does not know what to do next. The protagonist and his team stand in tension, watching the girl in black walk forward with a cold expression on her face. A massive, green-skinned, red-haired monster enters the stage. The muscular character attacks the monster with a powerful blow from his hand. A portal opens in front of the monster, and Kim angrily comments that he was just starting to enjoy the fight. The hero's face reflects anxiety. Beads of sweat appear on his skin when he notices someone approaching. He peers around the corner cautiously, clearly preparing for his next move, and spots Lee. The protagonist looks at the situation with restraint, while Kim reacts loudly, expressing bewilderment. Kim asks what Hoenn is doing in this place, with a hint of displeasure. Under the pressure of the tense situation, Kim tries to justify himself, adding that he thought that Lee had already opened his portal a long time ago. The shock shows on his face as he realizes how insightful Lee is, and expresses it through a confused expression. The protagonist, using a powerful kick, knocks Kim into the portal, stopping his futile attempts at resistance. He comments on Kim's actions with surprise, expecting him to decide to do something weird again. Suddenly, he realizes that new information has been revealed to him about how the true potential of the unrivaled killer will manifest itself when the day of blood comes. The hero reflects that he does not know when exactly this day will come, but he feels that the killer is counting down every minute until it comes. A level 10 orc appears in front of him and furiously rushes at the protagonist, calling him a low-level creature. Lee deftly repels the attack, quickly attacking the orc and realizing that he urgently needs to become stronger. He looks at the fallen orc and notes that his portal is still not open, which leaves him confused. He realizes that he could destroy all the monsters, but he understands that the portals are not yet open for the rest of the participants. The hero reasons that he should be wary of Song So-yeon, who is engaged in the extermination of monsters, wondering what the best course of action is. Suddenly a green stench hits him, and he realizes with disgust that the situation is becoming difficult. The protagonist winces at the disgusting smell emanating from the monster that appeared next to him. He looks at the monster with determination, giving it a reserved greeting before the fight begins. The monster, frightened by the hero's presence, screams in surprise. The protagonist kneels down in front of the girl, who looks at him with bewilderment. He asks the girl for some help, which raises even more questions in her. In desperation, the protagonist screams, asking to be allowed to stay alive. The girl is stunned by the unexpected request, not understanding what is really happening. The protagonist rhetorically asks about the limits of his bad luck, covering his face with his hand in annoyance. The girl ironically notes that he apparently considers himself too unlucky, recalling his complaints. The main character, smiling, admits that there has never been a single victory in his life, and such tasks, dependent on luck, are a real nightmare for him. Lee explains with a sly smile that he deliberately avoids killing the orcs, as their death activates the portal. Sun So-yeon is tense, knowing that she must kill the protagonist on a certain day, and this only makes her nervousness worse. If the protagonist dies without activating the portal, the consequences for Sun So-yeon could be extremely unfavorable. The protagonist, seeing that the other participants have no problems with the portals, confidently thinks about his plan. He is outraged by the remaining 5 portals, complaining that games that depend on luck have always been a nightmare for him. The girl, with an angry expression, orders him to be silent and to focus on destroying his opponents, emphasizing her irritation. Every time he kills an orc, the protagonist feels a strange and contradictory pleasure from this process. Sun So-yeon also experiences similar emotions, thinking about how her own desire to kill the protagonist is intertwined with his successes. The protagonist points out that his portal has not yet opened, while the girl shows displeasure and wariness. He looks at her suspiciously and asks how many portals she has already managed to open, leading her to frankness. The heroine admits that she opened 5 portals, lowering her gaze with restraint, creating a tense atmosphere. 5 activated portals glow blue next to the heroine, symbolizing her progress. The protagonist stands in front of one active portal, emphasizing that he has only opened 1, showing the contrast in their successes. He wonders if they might be alone on this floor. A message comes in that there are only 10 minutes left, which causes concern, and the heroine stands nearby, watching him. He decides to go look for the portal on his own, and tells the heroine that she can leave. The heroine abruptly tells him to stop, which unexpectedly attracts his attention, and he turns around in surprise. He asks if she needs anything from him, reminding her that they have very little time left, pointing out the importance of every moment. She hesitates, barely holding back her words, preparing to say something significant, but her confusion is felt. Lee feels a sense of foreboding, deciding it's time to flee as the situation becomes increasingly threatening. He grips his weapon, preparing to attack. Sun So-yeon holds Lee's hand and says with an embarrassed expression that she forgot where all her portals are. The protagonist exclaims with surprise and irritation, wondering about the situation. He realizes that his ally suffers from topographical cretinism, which complicates their task. Walking quickly forward, Kim moves decisively towards the goal, not paying attention to obstacles. With a wide and sincere expression of joy, the character shouts "bro" while trying to hug the protagonist. The protagonist, without hesitation, delivers a powerful blow to the face of his joyful ally, knocking him down. Flying back, Kim hits the ground with a loud noise, showing how powerful the impact was. Lee breathes a sigh of relief and asks not to scare him like that. The girl comments that his ally looks a lot like an orc, to which Lee replies that there was no need to voice it. The characters are happy to see Soyeon, who has finally returned and joined them. One of the characters extends his hand to Soyeon, expressing hope that they can work well together despite her past role as an enemy. As she leaves, Soyeon dismissively replies that she finds it all nauseating, leaving her interlocutor confused. Kim is annoyed that Soyeon didn't die on the 4th floor. The protagonist assumes that the system will not allow Soyeon to be killed just like that, and decides to act in such a way that she remains in his debt. The three characters look at the rabbit with surprise and alarm, who mockingly asks if they have gotten used to their new life. Kumkum appears in the form of a white rabbit, joyfully greeting everyone as their dear friend. Suddenly, Kumkum's head explodes, causing shock to those around him. Soyeon points the gun at the spot where Kumkum was standing and asks him in irritation what he was doing there. All the characters look at Soyeon in confusion as she just cut off Kumkum's head, and the protagonist is shocked by her actions. The girl's face reflects confusion as the creature suddenly approaches her, causing alarm. The rabbit kicks the girl with incredible force, sending her flying, her body thrown back by the momentum. Blood appears on her lips after the blow, and she appears to scream in pain. The girl breathes heavily, slumping against the wall as smoke rises around her, furious at her enemy. The guy looks at her from afar, amazed at how powerful the blow was. He thinks, realizing that given the enemy's characteristics, she was still lucky. The riddle rabbit grins, bringing his hands to his face and declaring that he is not done with them yet. Then suddenly he announces to everyone the beginning of a new mission. His smile turns sinister, suggesting a change of scenery before the next stage. Lee watches in confusion, not understanding what exactly is being prepared. A white rabbit stands in the middle of a huge light-filled library. The rabbit pulls one of the books from the shelf, declaring that everyone must choose a book. A sly smile appears on the rabbit's face, and he says that the choice of book can either save or destroy them. The red-haired character does not understand how his fate can depend on a book, hoping to find a guide to swordsmanship. The rabbit reminds that no one but the participants themselves should know which book they have chosen, and that the library will disappear as soon as the 5th floor task begins. The rabbit smiles and begins to disappear, holding up a bright pink book, hoping that the participants will be lucky with their choice. The guy in the blue hoodie is concerned that the rabbit didn't explain the task in more detail, and calls on everyone to find the books faster. The characters begin searching through the shelves, each paying attention to certain categories of books. The protagonist muses that their choice of book probably determines their classes, but he is unsure if he should choose at random. A guide appears with a suggestion to take a book related to the regressor, which causes the hero to wonder why he needs a novel. The character holds a book titled SSS Rank Regressor, Link Monopoly, and is informed that the book's choice has been made and cannot be replaced, and the choice will remain unknown to others. The protagonist looks disappointed, reflecting that the title of the book does not inspire much enthusiasm. He turns the pages of the book, thinking that the choice of the book may not be random, and decides to read it carefully. The hero becomes irritated while reading, as the content seems boring and banal fantasy to him, no different from thousands of others. Another character opens his book, which comes to life and displays the name of the melting sword technique. Another character demonstrates his technique, learned from a book, called the King of the Fist Punch. Isel, holding her book, uses the technique of the Eastern Healer's manuscript, which gives her a special energy. A strong blow with a shovel creates a dull sound. The protagonist watches this with amazement, wondering what kind of book his friend chose. He cannot understand what this incessant knocking is, and his face shows extreme bewilderment about what is happening. A character with a scary expression tells the rabbit that he sees right through everything. He decides not to interfere with the character and continues walking. The characters are in a classroom with rows of desks and students. The protagonist notices the stillness of time and looks at the people around him, who look like ordinary students. One of the students tells her friend that she feels younger, to which the friend agrees, noticing the changes. Lee is surprised to realize that they have been rejuvenated to fit the mission environment. He says he finally sees what his comrade looked like in his youth. Isel appears in the guise of a schoolgirl, still just as beautiful, attracting the admiring gaze of the hero. The hero recognizes the dark-haired student as Soyeon and is surprised by her changed appearance. The girl clenches her fist in anger, her gaze full of anger, and she rudely asks why they are staring at her like that. The protagonist notices that Song So-yeon has hardly changed over the past time, except for her demeanor. In class, the students discuss, feeling that they have been rejuvenated to meet the requirements of the new assignment. The rabbit announces that over the course of 4 days, the participants will have to complete deadly quests, challenging them to give it their all. The 2 students realize that failing the quests will result in their death. Lee recalls how he handled the deadly task, but anticipates difficulties for the other participants. He is disappointed with his book choice, considering it useless and wondering why he chose it. A glowing cloud descends upon the students, giving them handfuls of memories to help them roleplay. Memories captivate participants, immersing them in past images and events. The protagonist receives a powerful charge of memories that begin to accumulate in his mind. He realizes that there are now 2 sets of new memories in his head, and he experiences a feeling of being overwhelmed. Memories from the past are connected with the plot of the novel Monopoly of the SSS rank regressor connection. The teacher explains how to quickly strengthen mana using special methods, demonstrating it in front of the class. Jinho points out to Hoon that the other students are acting like supporting characters in a novel. Hoon notices that one of the students may be the main figure in this world. He understands that in front of him is Yunam, a regressor who has knowledge about the future. Yunam was strengthened so that he could overcome many challenges in his life. The teacher asks the students a question, promising to award points for the correct answer. Hoon recalls that according to the plot of the novel, Yunam was able to answer this question. Yunam raises her hand and confidently gives an answer, saying X, the correct answer to the teacher's question. Lee reports that Professor Brown's team at Columbia University is currently researching this issue, which surprises Yunam. The teacher expresses surprise at finding a genius among the students in the class, hinting at the student who answered correctly. Store points are awarded, and the protagonist realizes that the management made him choose this particular book for a reason. Along the way, the protagonist is asked how he learned about the character Exi, and he replies that he flashed in his new memories. The red-haired student jokes that the hero is lucky with this knowledge, to which he replies that if he is jealous, then he should complain to the tower. The girl asks when the quest will start. The main character thinks about the development of events, checking with the plot of the novel. The system notifies about the appearance of a new quest, and students receive messages, seeing holographic screens with the task in front of them. Ho-young carefully reads the information about an upcoming quest that requires clearing a dungeon and ponders the importance of the item that the boss of this place has. His hand clenches into a fist as he decides to go ahead with his plans, despite the expectation that Yunam should be in charge of the operation. The group begins running towards the task site, demonstrating unity and determination in completing the mission. Yunam, noticing the strange movement ahead, looks puzzled and wary, preparing for a possible collision. Ho-young and the team confidently advance forward, encountering Yunam, who is surprised by their appearance in this place. In a fierce battle, Ho-young lands a blow on a large opponent, demonstrating his strength and skills in combat. He then slices the orc in 2 with furious determination, his powerful strike creating bursts of energy, highlighting the incredible power and precision of the attack. During the battle, he appears determined and sarcastically says that no one should have found this place except his team. Yunam is at a loss as to how Ho-young's team managed to find this place, his expression revealing surprise and wariness. His face reflects suspicion, and he admits to himself that he has no idea how they managed to find this location. Yunam wonders how he got such strong classmates, singling out one of them in particular. The dark-haired girl attacks enemies with a resolute attack using a bright magical weapon, suppressing several opponents at once. The protagonist jumps, channeling his energy into a powerful blow that emphasizes his determination and readiness for battle. Yunam muses that he couldn't have simply forgotten something so important, expressing doubt and worry. He throws a golden spear with force towards his opponents. The spear strikes the enemy, creating a bright flash and dealing heavy damage, highlighting the power of its attack. He grips the spear tightly in his hand, preparing for the next strike, his determination clear. Yunam stands with a spear, surrounded by a glow of power, showing his readiness for battle. His classmates watch him with surprise and admiration, commenting on his power. The main character reflects on the strength of the protagonist, who, in his opinion, has become even stronger. Lee confidently states that he is not going to give up without a fight and is ready to fight. He understands that to get the reward he needs to kill more orcs and earn the right to challenge the boss. A group of orcs, shown in a blue glow, prepare to attack in a dark passage. The hero, holding a weapon, declares his skill in detecting monsters and confidently moves forward. The girl remembers her previous encounter with the monster and holds her weapon at the ready, preparing for battle. Lee slices the orc with a powerful movement, causing his face to contort in rage and pain. Then, without wasting any time, he rushes to meet another orc, holding his sword at the ready. His gaze is focused and he prepares to strike with determination, moving with precision and speed. A girl armed with a pistol attacks an orc, delivering a powerful shot to his head. Suddenly, an orc's club appears in front of her from above, trying to attack her. The orc tries to hit the girl with his club, but she deftly jumps up and dodges the attack, avoiding the collision. She aims with concentration and fires at her enemy, holding her weapon with determination and readiness to fight to the end. Unum, with a brightly glowing weapon in his hand, is surrounded by several orcs ready to attack, but he shows confidence by swinging his weapon. The two characters watch the battle, amazed by the incredible abilities and strength of their comrades, which causes them to admire them. The girl is surprised to see Ho-young putting in all his effort in the battle and expresses slight concern about it. Ho-yeon, in a fit of rage, attacks the orcs, shouting about his motivation to not allow the team to be sent on a deadly mission. A group of characters, with visible excitement, turn to the main character, expressing support, clenching their fists in a gesture of solidarity. The boy wipes away his tears and respectfully tells Ho-young that he is inspired by his bravery and nobility, expressing his gratitude. The hero enthusiastically raises his weapon up, loudly calling everyone to victory, which inspires the entire team to a decisive battle. The entire team stands in front of a huge gate that opens after all the orcs have been destroyed, revealing a passage to the boss. The protagonist looks in surprise at Unum, who stands next to him with a spear in his hand, illuminated by a ray of light, which emphasizes his confidence and strength. He is exhausted and disappointed, admitting that he gave it his all but it wasn't enough, standing next to the girl who quietly watches. The protagonist and Unum are faced with an unknown challenge, lost in thoughts about what to do next and whether they will have to give up. He offers to give Unum the right to fight the boss, which causes confusion in Unum, who does not understand what he means. Lee asks the question with a mysterious determination, sparking Unum's interest and prompting him to find out more. Unum's face is distorted with surprise and tension when the protagonist asks a provocative question about how to get rid of the shackles of regressions. The protagonist, with a confident smile, declares that he will not give up so easily, demonstrating his resilience in the face of adversity. The huge doors begin to slowly open, creating a bright light passage through which the hero enters a dark room, preparing for the final battle. Lee stands in front of Unum, who points a gun at him and wants to know who he is. The protagonist calls for the sword to be removed, to which Unum says to answer his question. The hero angrily asks his interlocutor how he knows that he is a regressor. The interlocutor, looking at the hero with determination, asks him a question, hinting at some important vision of winter that he must see in the future. The hero is stunned and shocked by what he heard, his facial expression reflecting confusion. In the flashback, the hero and another man are standing at a window, discussing a time when they had to relive a certain period of their lives over and over again. Raindrops flow down the window, and the hero reflects on his desire to see a certain future, despite the constant repetitions. The hero looks at his reflection with a tired expression, admitting how tired he is of this endless repetition. Lee tentatively offers to hand over the right to fight the boss in exchange for a way to break the shackles of regression. He mentions with a cold, determined look that his goal is to break the cycle of regressions, which he has been striving to achieve for millions of years. The protagonist realizes that he has no choice but to agree to the terms, and his face expresses determination and resignation. He threateningly warns his interlocutor that if he tries to deceive him, the consequences will be serious, and leaves, holding his weapon at the ready. The main character, standing in the light, admits that he managed to get here after all. Suddenly, a huge orc appears with a terrifying expression and red effects in the background. The guy nervously notes that the orc's appearance is not at all friendly. Calming himself, the hero reflects that he knows how to defeat the orc, although he cannot determine his level. The orc lets out a loud roar that echoes around, giving it a terrifying appearance. Despite the roar, the hero notes that his unique sense allows him not to panic. He is able to block all senses without succumbing to sonic attacks. The protagonist, with a cold and confident gaze, remains unperturbed despite the psychological sound attacks directed at him. Resolutely rushing forward, the hero declares that psychological attacks do not affect him. Focusing, he activates his second strategy, preparing for the next move in the battle. A powerful and intimidating opponent with an invulnerable torso raises his weapon threateningly, preparing to attack. Lee notices that his opponent has a strong torso, but his legs are much weaker, which gives him a strategic advantage. With fierce determination, he targets his opponent's legs, preparing for a series of attacks. It deals a series of quick and repeated slashes to the opponent's legs, leaving bloody marks and weakening their stability. In the final attack, the hero, clutching the sword, rushes forward, creating a powerful blow, aiming at the enemy. The enemy falls to his knees, bleeding, his powerful figure weakened and barely able to stand on his feet. The protagonist jumps high into the air, preparing for the decisive and final attack. With incredible strength, he makes a final strike with his sword, cutting through the enemy, ending the fight. The characters play a game of rock, paper, scissors. Kim exclaims about his latest loss, while Lee calmly enjoys the situation, commenting that this is not the first time he has won. He then exclaims in annoyance, wondering if his opponent is cheating in the game, expressing his disbelief. Lee calmly demands that he be given the gold he won. A close-up of the hero's hand with a ring on his finger is accompanied by information that there are only 2 mythical artifacts in this novel. An image of the spear Gungnir, noted as an unmissable weapon with incredible power. The protagonist holds the mythical ring of Nike, mentally acknowledging its significance, even if it does not have the same power as Gungnir. Yunam will have to cope without the ring, but Lee is ready to share with him all the necessary information to help him in the upcoming trials. A girl with a stern expression on her face abruptly places a cup on the table in front of the main character, attracting his attention. She persistently offers to play with her, expressing serious intentions. Her eyes radiate determination, emphasizing that the game is not only about luck, but also about skill. The protagonist, keeping his gaze on her, asks defiantly how much she is willing to bet. Sun So-yeon answers with a serious expression, 3,000 gold, showing how high the stake is. Lee, with determination on his face, suggests raising it to 5, adding tension to the conversation. A large group of students in uniform stand in front of the building, creating an atmosphere of preparation for an important event. The protagonist notes that an important moment has arrived, which occurs in many novels. Lee prepares to strike the large crystal with his sword, reflecting the level of his magical abilities. The teacher explains the procedure, saying that hitting the crystal will reflect everyone's magical power, based on which teams will be formed for research. The character comments in surprise that this is cool, and that he is looking forward to seeing how strong the rest of the cadets are. Cadet number 1 prepares for the strength measurement, holding his sword in his hand with a serious expression. After hitting the crystal, the number 43 is displayed on the screen, causing a lively reaction among the audience, emphasizing the cadet's strength. The protagonist, assessing the reaction of those around him, concludes that the result was high, assuming the strength of the cadet according to his memories. The guy hears the administrator's command that the next participant should go out for the test, and he understands that it is his turn. He attacks the huge crystal with a scream, showing impressive strength, and the crystal displays a result of 69. The other participants, surprised, admire his strength, discussing the result, and the guy smiles proudly. His joy is interrupted by a push from a muscular opponent, who confidently declares that he has no equal in such tests. With a loud cry, the muscular contestant delivers a powerful blow to the crystal, and the result 75 is displayed on the screen. The crowd explodes in surprise as the contestant scores 75 with his bare hands, causing everyone to cheer. The bullet flies past the character, barely missing him, which emphasizes his agility and luck in avoiding danger. The girl walks out to the test with a confident look, holding a gun, and attracts the attention of the crowd. She shoots the crystal, which displays the result 98, causing shock to the onlookers. The audience is shocked by her result, and does not understand how she achieved such success using an ordinary gun. Lee watches the scene with a slight smirk, feeling proud of the Academy's cadets. Yunam shows a result of 115, demonstrating his strength and success in the test. Over lunch, Kim notes with annoyance that Lee has not been properly rewarded for his efforts. Lee strikes the crystal, causing it to flash at 64, while contemplating his result. A sign with the inscription, "Start of the second quest," appears in front of the surprised hero holding a cutlery. Close-ups of the surprised faces of various characters as they realize that a new stage of the mission has begun. 2 characters discuss a strong cadet they recently saw in the dungeon, speculating that he may have been trapped. The guy notices that the nearest garden is only an hour away, and they discuss possible steps for salvation. Yunam actively fights several bullies in the academy hallway after her regression. A man in the shadows sits in a chair, surrounded by red light, and is introduced as the son of the leader of one of the most influential guilds. Park Yeon-seok orders his subordinates to brutally beat Yun-nam in a dark room. The silhouette of a man in a doorway, illuminated by bright light, symbolizes the hero's unexpected rescue. A group of characters runs forward, showing their desire and readiness for decisive action. The main character squeezes his hand with a ring that has mystical powers, symbolizing protection and confidence. The characters flee, and Isel wonders about the dangers that might await them. Silhouettes of 3 opponents appear in the dark atmosphere, emphasizing the tension and impending danger. Under the full moon, the heroes run to the battlefield, realizing the need to save Yunam at any cost. One of the characters scolds the hero lying on the ground, demonstrating contempt and superiority. He bends over the hero and threatens him, expressing a complete lack of fear. The powerful shot hits the target directly, emphasizing the accuracy and power of the attack. The girl with the gun in front of the other characters confidently points the weapon at the enemy, showing her determination to engage in battle. The main character looks at what is happening in surprise, questioning his comrade's actions. Kim charges forward with determination, preparing for battle despite the potential danger. Lee irritably notes that the situation is becoming more and more difficult and requires more and more effort. The character with gray hair and glasses creates a powerful energy shield, reflecting the attack, his face expressing control over the situation. A sarcastic character with blue hair laughs at the cadets, calling them insolent brats. The protagonist realizes that the shot was made intentionally, and that the moment was perfect. They encounter 3 opponents with different abilities, realizing that conventional methods will not work against them. The protagonist looks down with his head down. A ring is visible on his finger. Yunam takes advantage of the opportunity to attack with his weapon, aiming at the enemy. The cadets rush together to attack a whole group of opponents, demonstrating coherence in battle. 2 characters stand back to back, each alert and ready for battle, with weapons in their hands and determined expressions on their faces. The protagonist expresses confusion as to how they always seem to be in the right place at the right time, but admits that now is not the time for questions. Lee smiles and suggests they thank him later before focusing on getting out of the situation. Kim lunges forward with a powerful blow, threatening his opponent. The energy blast pushes Kim back, creating a bright explosion of light and sound around him. The group of heroes watches what is happening with tension, surprise on their faces. The antagonist is furious, his face distorted with anger, shouting curses, losing control of himself. He mocks the heroes, laughing at their academic naivety and ignorance of the cruelty of the real world outside the walls of the academy. The antagonist, in a fighting pose, rushes to attack the heroes, with an expression of rage on his face. In the battle, 2 heroes face off against antagonists, each of whom demonstrates their skill in combat, demonstrating the intensity of the fight. The protagonist asks Soyeon to support the team from the rear, while the others are busy with close combat. Soyeon fires her pistol, covering the team. Lee instructs the team to retreat if they are injured, while Isel heals them so they can re-engage in battle. Yunam feels his body fill with energy, surrounded by a green light, expressing surprise at how quickly he healed. He reflects with surprise that he did not know about such abilities of his comrade, looking at him with admiration. The protagonist, realizing the strength of his enemies, grips his sword and resolutely prepares for battle. The character understands that the time has come to use the acquired skills. He encourages everyone to use the skills they learned from their books to defeat their opponents. Kim performs a powerful punch called the King of Fist First Punch. One of the opponents reacts with surprise to the mention of books and quests, apparently not understanding what it means. The enemy attacks with fury, and his comrades nearby are also preparing to attack. Fire and explosions fill the space, showing the intensity of the battle. The protagonist's group gathers in a circle, preparing to fight off all enemies. The protagonist stands with a sword, preparing for the decisive moment of the battle. Memories of previous trials and experiences give strength before the final battle. The 3 opponents stand together, surrounded by a red haze, demonstrating unity and confidence in their abilities. The enemies form a triangle, supporting each other, making it difficult to attack one of them. But the characters are looking for a way to test their strategy. It's as if Lee is fighting face-to-face with an impenetrable iron wall. The girl encourages the team, urging them to hold on and continue the fight. The red-haired man supports his comrade, assuring him that in his presence no wounds will be scary for them. One of the opponents ridicules them, emphasizing their persistence. The white-haired character warns others against becoming complacent. One of the enemies rushes forward furiously, preparing to launch an attack. The character, with a furious expression on his face, swings his club, preparing to deliver a crushing blow, his eyes red with rage. A girl in a school uniform looks up in fear, seeing the impending danger. The protagonist turns around abruptly and anxiously exclaims the girl's name, showing his concern for her safety. Yunam swung his spear with a concentrated face, preparing to attack. He attacks by directing a blow upward and hitting the opponent. The enemy who dodges the blow is struck, surprised to think that he definitely dodged. The opponent, standing on one knee, indignantly shouts an insult, seeing the hero opposite. 2 allies rush to help, reproaching each other for being too emotional. The main character notices the enemy's weak spot and understands that this is their chance. The enemy, surrounded by cadets, threatens to kill everyone. The rivals sense danger while one of them tenses in anticipation. The protagonist, with determination in his eyes, thinks that he now knows the reason for what is happening. 3 agents in dark suits and glasses attack their opponents simultaneously, swinging their batons, their faces expressing determination and fury, creating an atmosphere of powerful onslaught. Lee mockingly asks if the enemies should sit back while their leader is furious. The enraged opponent shouts a rude insult at the student. With a sly look, the student notices that the enemy leader is an impatient man, calling him by name. The guards react in panic to the student's knowledge, wondering how he knows their leader. With a sinister grin, the student reminds us of how many people the leader has already managed to kill. A character with a stern expression and a cigar looks into the distance. 3 students stand ready to attack, their eyes filled with confidence. Unum attacks the enemy with a powerful spear, causing sparks to fly from the collision. Then he, holding the weapon, stands in a dynamic position after the blow, the pose showing readiness for further action. The enemy is hit by purple energy bullets fired from the weapon, causing him to scream in pain. A girl with long purple hair fires a gun, directing bullets towards the enemy. Lee swings his sword, concentrating all his strength into the strike. He cuts through the enemy with a powerful blow, which is accompanied by bright flashes of energy. The body of the defeated enemy lies on the ground, symbolizing his complete defeat. The 2 remaining villains laugh evilly, anticipating the final battle. The protagonist and his comrade are preparing to deal a decisive blow to the enemy. One of the villains tells his comrade that they will still be punished. The enemies evaporate into thin air, leaving the student team victorious. A group of students rejoice in their victory, raising their weapons in triumph. The protagonist breathes a sigh of relief, realizing that he has accomplished the task, while his friends rejoice in the background. A character with a serious expression and a drop of sweat on his cheek stands against the backdrop of a night forest, asking his interlocutor whether he knew in advance what would happen today. Lee notices that instead of gratitude, he receives questions, which makes him slightly irritated. Unum, slightly embarrassed, thanks his friend, but he doesn't immediately understand his words. Hoenn advises Unum to remain vigilant, warning that even greater challenges lie ahead. The protagonist, looking at his friend, asks him another question, trying to find out if he is also a regressor. In response to the question, the protagonist smirks, stating that he is a much more powerful being, and leaves. Suddenly someone grabs him by the shoulder, interrupting his movement. Unum's gaze becomes stern, and he demands an answer to the question of how to break the cycle of regressions. In the classroom, the teacher announces the squads for the upcoming practice in the dungeon, attracting the attention of all students. Lee looks at the rare armor with a defense bonus, which makes him smile with satisfaction. The teacher announces the group's composition, appointing Unum as the leader. Yunhum's group members Jiho, Sunbum, and Yeonwoo each react differently to the appointment. The main character is also part of the new group. The protagonist reasons that with Yunum's group he will be able to receive a valuable reward, but realizes that it is too early to rejoice. Against the backdrop of the sunset, the protagonist asks if the interlocutor is aware that the dungeon has become active again. They discuss the rarity of the dungeon activating, but emphasize that this time it is active all the time. The protagonist reflects that with each regression he tried to solve the mystery, but until now he has not been able to do so. Unum emphasizes that the hero, as a more powerful being than the regressor, must know at least something about what is happening. The footage shows the plot of the novel, where 3 groups, including a 4th, will have to face a dangerous underground creature. The only ones who survived this incident were Yunum's group. However, there were simply no details or explanations of the phenomenon in the novel. With regret but honesty, the character admits that he does not know everything about the situation. A sudden grab by the collar causes surprise and confusion in the hero, who did not expect such a turn of events. The angry comrade yells at the hero, demanding an explanation and possible solutions to the problem. The character cries out in despair that he does not know how to stop the repeating events. The character's internal monologue highlights his helplessness and frustration with how the novel has described everything in general terms, without giving specifics. The girl asks in surprise what the guys are doing when they suddenly appear around the corner. One of the friends supports the other by the shoulders, creating an atmosphere of awkwardness and confusion. The girl stands with a motionless expression on her face, stunned by what she saw. She leaves, embarrassed, apologizing for going to the wrong place. The guys are panicking and trying to explain themselves to each other, trying to hide the fact that the situation has gotten out of control. A group of students stand in front of the entrance to the portal. The teacher directs them forward, calling them to action. Students enter the dungeon, feeling nervous before the academic assignment. Unum suggests splitting up to explore the dungeon faster, adding instructions to use walkie-talkies in case of danger. 3 groups will encounter the underground frenzy, namely the 4th, 9th, and 12th. He emphasizes that they are in the 4th group, and in the 9th are Isol and Soyeon. The main character also says that Kim is in the 12th group. Lee, deep in thought, wonders about the safety of the 9th group, knowing that Isol has healing magic, and an unrivaled killer who has received the blessing of the tower cannot be taken so easily. The group is attacked by ferocious wolves with glowing red eyes, causing panic in the main character, who looks at them in horror. The protagonist, gathering all his determination, deftly intercepts the weapon, preparing for the inevitable clash. But his ally is afraid of encountering sinister monsters. The young team member, clearly frightened, anxiously apologizes to the protagonist, realizing his vulnerability. The protagonist, with an expression of regret, asks his comrade if he could forget the past incident in which everyone voted for Lee and sent him on a deadly mission. The young team member admits that he lacked the courage to ask for help, bitterly realizing his indecisiveness. Hoen warmly consoles his comrade, noting his kind-heartedness and desire to help. He looks sternly at his younger friend, saying that there is no need to apologize, and if something like this happens again, he will need to do the same. Lee explains that in this apocalyptic tower, where death lurks at every turn, being too kind can be a fatal mistake. Emphasizing the danger, he says that the only way to survive here is to put yourself first. Then he places his hand encouragingly on his comrade's head, urging him not to torture himself with worries. A guy with bright sparkles in his eyes and a joyful smile walks behind his friend, who thoughtfully covers his mouth with his hand. The younger friend cheerfully notes that the protagonist must have been someone incredibly cool before the apocalypse, which leaves him confused. Flashbacks show that the protagonist grew up in an orphanage and often faced discrimination and prejudice. Later, as he grew up, he became an ordinary office worker who barely had enough money for his daily needs. After the tower appeared, he gained unique abilities through a series of random events. However, he understands that if it were not for luck, he would have died long ago on one of the floors of the tower. The hero looks at his friend with concern, asking what he is thinking about, and receives an evasive answer. The words about thinking about yourself first make his friend remember how the hero risked his life for others. He, full of determination, admits that he wants to become the same kind of person who can help others. The couple moves along a long corridor surrounded by glowing arches, reflecting on their purpose and following their destiny. While trying to open it, he feels a strange energy coming from the wall, and his friend confirms that he feels something unusual. The protagonist, relying on his intuition, realizes that only a researcher can uncover the secret of this energy. He warns his friend, telling him to move away from the wall, realizing the possible danger. Lee gathers his strength in preparation for a powerful attack, his resolve strengthening as he draws his weapon. The swing of the sword is filled with bright light, and his mastery of the weapon is demonstrated in a spectacular strike. A powerful burst of energy explodes around them as the heroes collide with an invisible force, their bodies surrounded by a blinding light. They enter a labyrinth illuminated by a mysterious light that surrounds them on all sides. There was not a single line written about the labyrinth in the novel. The hero realizes that this place was not created by the author, and together they continue their journey through the strange labyrinth. The young character calls out to his companion in fear, and suddenly an evil creature appears in front of them, surprised by the presence of people. The protagonist, noticing a sudden creature, sees its status and characteristics, realizing that it is dangerous. An evil dwarf appears before them, who furiously condemns them, calling them bugs. The dwarf leads a group of high-level creatures ready for battle. One of the creatures asks the leader to stop, noticing that the two heroes do not look like normal characters. They look around and notice that these creatures clearly suspect them of something, especially singling out the tall hero. The protagonist realizes that the creature is aware of the events of the novel, and even knows the final spoiler, which makes him wary. He looks ahead with surprise and anxiety, his eyes wide open, and an anxious heartbeat sounds around him. One of the gnomes, looking at the hero, asks who he is, expressing bewilderment and distrust. The protagonist calmly replies that he is a reader who learned about this world from a book, to which the gnome reacts with cautious interest, looking closely at his hands. The dwarf agrees with the hero's explanation, suggesting that he ended up here after waking up. The hero confirms this by nodding. Two gnomes discuss with suspicion and interest whether to trust the hero, their looks full of doubt. One of the gnomes, folding his arms, sternly asks the hero who he is and what he is doing in their world, showing wariness. The leader of the dwarves explains the purpose of their group, to plug plot holes in these types of novels. The protagonist, having understood the dwarves' goal, ponders how this knowledge will help him, while the dwarf leader suddenly realizes that his hammer has disappeared. He remarks with slight irony that he understands the difficulties the gnomes face, mentioning the numerous holes, comparing them to holes in cheese. One of the gnomes was touched, accepting the recognition of their hard work. Another gnome exclaims that their world is not a romance, but real darkness. The gnome grins and says that he originally wanted to bury him alive, but decides to erase his memory and let him go. The main character, shocked, asks if it is possible not to smile when saying such things. He concludes that the dwarves have no idea how to deal with yet another plot hole, and intends to point it out to them. The dwarves are amazed, asking in surprise how he knows all this. Lee looks away with a slight smile as the image of Unum appears behind him, symbolizing his memory of the novel where Unum found a way out of even the most hopeless situations. Both heroes emerge from a portal in the depths of the cave. One of the heroes notices with relief that they have made it outside. The red-haired character is amazed and assumes that they ate the protagonist's soul. The gnome, tapping the purple stone, says that he is ready to listen to Lee's plan. Lee suggests combining all 3 dungeons, which should go berserk. The dwarves discuss his proposal to merge the 3 dungeons into one, realizing that this would result in one dungeon going berserk, not 3 different dungeons. The elder mentions that increasing the size of the dungeon may result in an increase in the reward for clearing it. The gnome notes that even they cannot interfere in such matters. The dwarves are worried that the situation may develop differently if Unum receives a more generous reward. The protagonist wonders what will happen if he is the one who receives this award. He is surprised to hear that they are going to erase his memory, to which he reacts with confusion. The dwarf prepares to use his powers, thinking that if the minor hero gets the reward, it will only cause more problems. The main character screams in panic, not agreeing with what is happening. The character starts to slap his comrade on the cheeks with a scream, trying to bring him to his senses, worried about his condition. Pulling out the hammer, he becomes angry and outraged by the actions of the dwarves, trying to understand what they did to his friend. Lee, with a battered face and a pained expression, says he is fine. His ally smiles, expressing joy that his comrade has regained consciousness. In an apology, he admits that he thought his friend had his memory erased. The main character, with a serious expression on his face, reflects on the fact that the quest has a time limit. Lee tries to stop the dwarves, explaining that there is no point in erasing his memory, since he will leave this place tomorrow. Go Yanwu holds a hammer in his hands and innocently asks his interlocutor if he is looking for this hammer. He says that he took the hammer while his friend was being carried to the exit, demonstrating resourcefulness and a little cunning. Lee looks at the hammer with surprise, calling it a unique item, and discusses its properties with admiration, maintaining a conversation with his friend. With a slight grin, Lee admits that his companion is not such a weak coward as he previously thought. Information about a secret mission appears, which states that the protagonist must make the novel as believable as possible without attracting attention. The reward for the mission remains unknown. The scene shows the tension as the 2 characters find themselves on guard, realizing that something serious is about to happen. The ally, worried, calls out to Hoenn, wondering what's going on, and notices that the dungeons have merged into one. The protagonist heads to the northeast to find Oyunum, advising him to use the search skill to avoid dangerous monsters and complete the task quickly. Lee reflects on how his companion is stronger than he appears, and confidently believes that he is safe with Yunum around. A huge menacing monster with poisonous purple claws appears, creating an ominous atmosphere. The character screams in shock, asking why the monster started spitting poison. One of the heroes suggests that the reason for the monster's aggression is the dungeon's fury. The character thanks his companion, admitting that without his help, they would have been dead long ago. The girl with green glowing palms tenses up and warns her ally about an attack from behind. He turns his head to the side, noticing the scorpion's tail trying to pierce him. This character closes his eyes in an attempt to dodge the attack. In front of him appears a huge defeated monster, with sharp fangs and green slime on the ground. Sun So Yan, who killed the scorpion, approaches and orders everyone to gather to avoid losing their lives. The protagonist notices the sound of gunfire, realizing that Sun Soen is in the dungeon. He moves towards the enemy at high speed. The protagonist decides that the only way to get out is to clear the dungeon as quickly as possible. Another giant monster with red eyes appears, roaring menacingly, surrounded by skulls. The main character, holding a sword, prepares to enter into battle with it. Lee stands before a giant scorpion surrounded by an ominous purple light, realizing that he is facing the Scorpion King. He jumps, avoiding the monster's green poisonous liquid. The hero is concerned about the amount of poison in the scorpion, realizing that it will be difficult for him to get closer. Yunum and his group will be able to cope without his help, but the other two teams will have a harder time. With a serious expression, he moves forward, promising himself that no one will die on his shift. The character turns around sharply, seeing the threat, preparing for the imminent attack. His face is distorted by a scream as he is thrown against the wall by a powerful blow from his opponent. Despite his injury, he looks forward resolutely, realizing that he needs to get as close to the enemy as possible to strike. Lee flies towards his opponent, preparing to strike, creating a tense moment. A huge scorpion spews venom, preparing for its next attack. The protagonist activates a protective barrier, desperately shouting that it is an impenetrable shield. He confidently rushes forward to fight the huge monster approaching him at an alarming speed. His sword emits a powerful stream of energy, reaching the 3rd level of sword mastery. He passes through the portal and steps into a new territory full of dangers. He then wonders if Kim really managed to sneak into his heart and make him uneasy. The protagonist looks around and notices a deserted landscape, wondering why there is nothing here. Something menacing erupts from the ground, and he, with his sword at the ready, prepares to repel the unexpected attack. He lunges forward, meeting a spinning creature aimed straight at him. A strange creature rushes into the hero's face, causing him irritation. In a rage, he strikes with a powerful blow, cutting the mole and expressing his disgust at its vile appearance. A huge monster with red eyes and a sharp horn attacks rapidly, making frightening sounds. The moles attack Lee, cutting him with their sharp claws. The protagonist braces himself, realizing that without decisive action the situation could turn into a disaster. He grips his sword tightly. Against the backdrop of the sunset, the silhouette of the standing hero inspires hope. He mentally hopes that his comrade is alive. One of the characters is shown lying on the ground, wounded, and clearly having lost a lot of strength. An enraged Kim shouts with his fists, expressing his contempt for his enemies and his readiness to continue the fight. He strikes with furious energy, provoking his opponents to attack. His power knows no bounds. The hero attacks enemies with impressive speed. His movements are like lightning. Surrounding monsters are defeated one after another. He realizes that his strength is running out, but he is determined to fight to the end. The protagonist appears behind his comrade, suddenly saving him, who in amazement asks about the reasons for his presence here. Ho-young is relieved to see that his comrade is still alive, extending his hand to him and letting him know that they are together again. Kim, moved by his meeting with Ho-young, begins to cry, expressing his admiration and joy. Lee and his companion stand against the backdrop of the sunset, discussing the appearance of monsters that suddenly attack them. He remembers his fallen comrades, who, although they were minor characters, always remained human, and this memory touches him. Kim asks Ho-young about their next steps, suggesting that they leave this dangerous place. The men hear and sense the approach of a powerful threat. Their attention is focused on the destructive blows shaking the earth. The giant monster rushes at its opponents, roaring with power that fills everything around with fear and horror. Lee, sword in hand, decides to kill the last mole, determined to end this. The academy's director addresses the assembled students, expressing his condolences and willingness to provide assistance to the families of the victims. Ho-young apologizes to his fallen comrades for not being able to save them, his face reflecting sadness and guilt. Yunam reports that he has experienced regression countless times, but has never been able to suppress the madness of the dungeon. He informs Lee that he still managed to save several cadets' lives despite the difficulties. Yunam says with a slight smile, calling Lee someone more powerful than the regressor. The protagonist holds out a handkerchief and promises to ask for advice sometimes. Ho-young stands with a handkerchief in her hands, watching as the other person leaves. He wipes the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief, thinking about how he will become a completely different person in the future. Ho-young says with a determined expression that they will return to the tower soon. Yunam walks away along the stone path, and Ho-young realizes that this is a step towards conquering the tower. Ho-young looks into the distance with determination, realizing that he is preparing to end the tower once and for all. The character tries to call out to Lee, asking him to wait. Lee replies with confidence that they will finish everything with the tower together. A group of students leave with the hope that everything will end well. One of the heroes congratulates the team on a successful mission, glad that this time there were no casualties. The protagonist looks with admiration at the blue, glowing ball he holds in his hands, commenting on its incredible beauty and perceiving it as a reward for completing the task. Smiling, the character holds the ball and says that he can now get another class. The protagonist reflects on how he suddenly found himself working 2 jobs, recalling various scenes from his daily routine, including working in an office and delivering on a scooter. He clutches the ball, which glows brightly with blue energy around his hand, and gains a new taming ability. With a solemn expression on his face, the character activates the orb, declaring that the moment for action has now arrived. The hand emits glowing rays, highlighting its power and the character's preparation for the challenges ahead. The character looks at his tablet in confusion when he doesn't find the class he was expecting. He peers ahead warily, thinking about what is happening and trying to understand why he was assigned to this particular class. The protagonist turns around in irritation and tells someone to stop following him, expressing his reluctance to accept the pursuer. The little kitten looks at the character with curiosity, meowing sweetly, which adds an unexpected cuteness to the scene. The hero turns away in embarrassment, his cheeks turn red, and he asks not to look at him that way. He then runs down the empty street, leaving the kitten behind, watching him go. Lee smiles as he thinks that the new tamer class might not be so bad after all. A message appears on the information screen stating that there is a monster on the 7th floor that can be tamed, and the hero begins to fantasize about a suitable mount. The character smiles, realizing that he will soon be able to have his own pet, and looks forward to new adventures. He stands with a confident look, preparing for the challenges ahead, and, for the first time, looking forward to them with enthusiasm. A group of heroes go to fight against the orcs that fill the entire space in front of them, creating a large-scale clash. The hero's comrades fight against their opponents in a fierce battle, showing off their skills. The hero grips his sword and fights the monsters, dealing them crushing blows without relenting in his attacks. Lee dodges the attacks, showing off his agility as he fights bravely to pass the trials. The protagonist, wiping sweat from his forehead, looks around the battlefield, assessing the endless stream of enemies he has just defeated. In an explosion of emotion, Kim rushes at his opponents, screaming, aiming to destroy each of them. He laughs when the protagonist asks if he's tired, noting that such a chance to gain experience comes along rarely. Lee reasons that although there were almost no dangers on the 5th floor, the enemies did not provide much experience either. Kim is surprised to learn that the protagonist has already reached level 5, which the protagonist confirms by defeating another enemy. A message appears on the screen that the protagonist's experience has reached a point of singularity, and without additional training he will not be able to improve his characteristics. He reflects on the necessity of training and regrets all the fancy clothes he had to wear. Sudden sounds attract the hero's attention, who turns around, listening warily to the approaching noise. He uses his sage's eye to look intently to analyze the girl's characteristics. Sun So-yeon opens fire with 2 pistols, accompanying the attack with lightning-fast movements. Lee notes with displeasure that the girl has no restrictions on improving her characteristics, which seems extremely unfair to him. The girl, with a stern expression on her face, warns him not to stare and asks if he wants her to teach him a lesson. The protagonist notes to himself that she has a bad character, but looks at her fighting skills with respect as she continues to shoot at enemies. The protagonist's eyes light up with determination, and he notes that thanks to her, they have almost completed the task. Behind him, the silhouette of a powerful monster can be seen, which he intends to tame. The girl watches him from the side, thinking that he still lacks something to become a full-fledged fighter. The microphone informs participants that they will soon be moving on to the next floor's task, and that they will have the opportunity to improve their skills. The microphone informs the group that they can obtain a boost crystal on the 7th floor. The characters discuss how even the Apocalypse Tower has bonus floors, and admit that they have plenty of combat experience. The girl discovers a new crystal in the store that increases the chance of successfully enhancing items. One of the team members is happy to receive the crystal, offering to enhance their weapons to the maximum. The group, including the fierce fighter, resolutely rushes towards the glowing portal ahead. The protagonist watches the team's enthusiasm, a little surprised by their fighting spirit. He looks at Nika's ring, and realizes that the boost zone represents an opportunity for him to significantly increase his stats. A guide appears, informing you that there is a monster on the 7th floor that can be tamed. With determination in his eyes, the protagonist walks towards the glowing portal, anticipating that he will soon receive both a boost and a pet. A battle takes place in an open clearing, where several fighters attack monsters using their swords and agility, delivering quick and accurate blows. In the forest, the hero notices that the crystals are not falling out, wiping sweat from his face, and his companion is lost in thought. The same man explains that crystals do not drop due to a lack of desperation in actions, comparing the situation to searching for the last bullets while surrounded by enemies. The protagonist looks at the dead beast, thinking that the warrior fought to the death. The red-haired man, triumphantly raising his hands with the enhancement crystal, joyfully announces his discovery. He enthusiastically declares that he is lucky today, recalling that he has been called the god of empowerment since childhood. The hero is surprised by the many nicknames of his companion: the Iron Fist of Korea, the Thunderstorm of Moles, the God of Strengthening. Kim, turning to the hero, resolutely refuses to share the crystal, expressing an unwillingness to share. Lee sarcastically asks what exactly his companion is going to enhance, hinting at his fighting method. The red-haired man is confused when he realizes that he is fighting with his fists, his face expressing panic. The protagonist looks at the dead monster with disappointment, noting that it is clearly of no use to him as a pet due to its weakness and lack of riding qualities. He looks ahead calmly, wondering if he has enough time to continue exploring the area. The top panel displays the remaining time, just under 2 hours, and the hero slowly walks along a forest path, lost in thought. The hero suddenly notices that there is much less time left than he expected, which causes him great concern and surprise. The hero's gaze falls on a potential pet, a bear king, but he notes that the creature is too slow for his tasks. The hero saddles the black wolf, noting its impressive size and imposing appearance, but suggests that it could be faster. A cat with a double head appears before him. The animal is funny, but the hero understands that it is also not suitable for his purposes. He recalls the manual, which spoke of a strong and hardy pet suitable for riding, and expresses frustration at not being able to find one. Hoenn holds the enhancement crystal in his hands, and muses that he would like to acquire a few more of them to complete his training, but worries that the search for a pet may take a long time. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to a glint coming from afar, which makes him interested and wary. The hero notices a silhouette flying from above and freezes in anticipation, preparing for an unexpected encounter with this creature. A look of shock appears on the protagonist's face when he sees an unexpected creature in front of him. The next frame shows an image of a massive beast with gloves on its paws, ready for battle. The creature, called Kangtown, growls furiously and prepares to attack, causing surprise with its ferocious appearance. Lee, examining the enemy, decides that such a pet is not suitable for him, but is ready to test what he is capable of. The kangaroo begins his attack by loudly shouting his name, although the hero does not trust him. The hero, clenching his fist, pronounces a challenge, naming the beast, and prepares for battle. They collide in a powerful impact, which is accompanied by a flash of light from the collision. The kangaroo responds with a powerful counterattack, forcing the hero to dodge, but he remains resilient. The creature picks up speed and leaps forward with its fist, planning its next strike. The hero, holding back the pain after the blow, realizes the strength of the enemy and decides to remain cautious. The protagonist lands abruptly, causing a split in the ground beneath his feet. Face to face with the monster, the hero looks determined, opposite the beast with a furious look. The hero demonstrates his strength by tensing his muscles and clenching his fist, preparing to attack. The hero's opponent, a huge kangaroo with boxing gloves, grins maliciously, confident in his strength. The hero makes a deft jump, moving with incredible speed and maneuverability. Lee makes a deft leap, moving with incredible speed and agility. The hero deftly grabs the kangaroo by the tail, holding it in his hands. He rides on top of the defeated monster, grinning cheerfully as he controls his opponent. The monster, bowing before the hero, recognizes him as its master, and the system offers to give him a name. Hoenn looks at the screen thoughtfully, thinking about what to name his new pet. The character happily names his new pet Kangasu, expressing pride in the name he came up with. Kanga, with wide eyes and a slightly comical expression on his face, lives up to his name. The protagonist wonders whether he should try to find a cuter pet to avoid possible trouble. A bright flash of light blinds the hero, forcing him to cover his eyes with his hand in surprise. The intense glow continues to spread around, making visibility difficult and creating the feeling of a powerful explosion. Lee watches what is happening in amazement, his gaze full of surprise. The character sees a charming pet, a cute and funny kangaroo in boxing gloves, who looks very friendly. The hero exclaims in admiration, reacting emotionally to the cute pet. A message appears indicating that the task on the 7th floor is complete. The hero's group of friends watches the pet with interest. Friends are puzzled as to where this strange baby kangaroo, which looks unusual and funny, came from. The hero introduces the baby kangaroo to the team, inviting everyone to say hello to him, causing the other participants to feel touched. One of the comrades asks how the main character found this unusual pet. The protagonist sheepishly explains that he somehow gained the ability of a tamer. One of the team members covers his face with his hand, thinking about what he just learned about the hero class. Lee realizes that his attempt to make excuses was stupid, and begins to think about how best to lie. In the heat of the moment, the comrade loudly declares that Hoenn probably would not have been satisfied with just one class. The entire team begins to applaud and praise Hoenn, considering him worthy of several classes at once. The team continues to chant the hero's name, praising him, while the baby kangaroo looks at what is happening with some bewilderment. Lee asks his comrades if they were able to improve their equipment. His comrades react with restraint, showing embarrassment and disappointment. Some turn away, some avoid looking, and some clearly show their displeasure. The main character, with a kangaroo on his shoulder, realizes that he expected exactly this result and nothing surprises him. He notices a strange sound with bewilderment and looks around in search of its source. One of the characters shows off an updated high-ranking leather backpack, causing the hero to be surprised. Flashbacks show the moment he stealthily took the hammer while Hoenn was being carried out. A hammer with unusual characteristics appears, which can significantly increase the chance of enhancing items. Lee pats the character on the head in approval, acknowledging his ability and observation. The girl asks the young man in surprise if he has noticed any changes. Lee holds a red sword in his hand, designated as a unique class weapon. The next shot switches focus to the shining armor, shining with a metallic light, also marked as a unique class, emphasizing its rarity and power. The group of friends reacts with joy and delight to the changes that have taken place, noting their uniqueness. The heroes, having gathered together, do not yet imagine what events await them ahead. The group finds itself in a mysterious room with blue lights that emphasize the mysterious atmosphere. Suddenly the lights go out, causing surprise and alarm among everyone. A mysterious character with a gloomy smile appears before the heroes, who reproaches them for being too relaxed. The protagonist and his companions look on, their expressions conveying a mixture of confusion and determination as the mysterious figure approaches, emitting a strange aura. A dramatic confrontation becomes inevitable when the stranger reveals his intentions, claiming that he staged the show to relieve boredom. The tension increases when one of the characters, clearly angry, demands an explanation of what is happening, highlighting the uncertainty and danger that lies ahead of them. The character offers to give the opportunity to obtain another's ability. The situation becomes tense. One person looks menacingly, while the other maintains a cold and frightening calm. The rabbit performs rapid actions to light the red candles, creating the effect of a mysterious ritual. Red candles flare up, illuminating the arena, which is filled with an eerie light, adding to the atmosphere of danger. To fulfill this desire, a plan is put into action, resulting in a group of people gathering, creating a sense of impending danger. The focus is on a man in authoritative clothing, standing confidently, surrounded by armed and disciplined companions. Another group, distinguished by their appearance and behavior, appears worried but determined, which emphasizes their readiness to fight against circumstances. A notification appears on the screen with the conditions of the event, where participants must destroy others to receive a significant reward. Questions arise about the identity of the new enemy, leading to speculation about his intentions and the need for confrontation to avoid a fatal outcome. Soyeon reacts tensely to the unexpected threat of a gun pointed at her opponent. Lee reacts with surprise to his ally's unexpected behavior. Men armed with long, shining spears show their readiness for battle. Lee, with a stern expression on his face, calls out the name decisively, trying to warn the other character nearby. He muses that there might be at least a drop of humanity left in the girl, despite her dark and frightening appearance. The girl's dark silhouette and facial expression emphasize her gloomy mood. A man with a stern look and an axe wonders if a pointed gun should be considered the start of a war. The protagonist, with his head down, ponders the dilemma of whether people should destroy each other in order to complete their tasks. The rabbit, with a mysterious expression on his face, utters a phrase that creates tension, foreshadowing further events. Kumkum kindly offers to lead everyone to the stage. Lee wakes up on his bed with a surprised expression on his face. Players receive a message informing them that they need to move to another room within 10 seconds. The shot shows the tense reactions of the characters, who begin to realize the seriousness of the situation. Lee begins his forward movement in order to make it to another room before the allotted time runs out. He rushes down the corridor at lightning speed, covering the last meters to the door, while the timer counts down the last seconds. At the last moment, he reaches for the door as the timer hits 2 seconds, demonstrating incredible reaction speed and concentration to avoid mortal danger. Once in the new room, he notices the presence of another person, which hints at the upcoming dialogue. The leader of the group appears, greeting the guest and inviting him to sit down. The group's leader, Kang-do, introduces himself, showing his calm. The next frame emphasizes the message that players must move to other rooms within the allotted time, or they will die. The group leader apologizes for the modest treat, clarifying that there is only water in the glasses. The main character reflects on being called a leader despite his low level, which makes him think about the unusualness of the situation. The man states that he does not intend to attack, but warns that if there is aggression from the other group, he will have to defend himself. The character standing opposite agrees that he also does not want conflict. Kang-do recalls how much blood was spilled around the tower, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. and the brutality of the events that were taking place. He expresses his reluctance to lose his comrades to the tower's evil designs, demonstrating his determination to preserve the remnants of the team. Lee recalled declaring that he would not be manipulated by the tower. He begins to assume that his interlocutor is also a victim who, like him, is trying to protect his comrades. The man offers the possibility of cooperation, citing similar feelings, while the young man cautiously evaluates the offer. The guy doubts how they will be able to convey their intentions to others if they start working together. Noting the scattered nature of the team, he wonders about the honesty of his interlocutor and believes that the only way to cope with the situation is to use a special skill. The man at the table says he has one way, explaining that he has the ability of telepathy. He explains that if he is convinced of the other group's peaceful intentions, he will use telepathy to order his comrades not to attack. Lee is stunned to think how a rare ability could cause envy, but he knows there is no other choice. He concludes that in order to complete the mission without casualties, it is necessary to come to an agreement. The hero understands that compromise is the only way out of the situation. He assures that their group is peaceful, and they will not attack first unless there is aggression from the other side. However, he notices that there is one person in their group that he cannot completely control. He points to the woman with the gun, emphasizing that she is a threat because of her independence. The man confirms this by clenching his fist and admitting that he cannot influence her actions. The next shot shows him squeezing his hand hard, showing his inner tension. The young man, with a determined look, makes an oath, promising to stop her. Kangdu, thinking about what he heard, agrees with his plan, saying a short word of confirmation. He touches his head with his hand, conveying a message to his people, thereby expressing his trust in the words of his interlocutor. The leader enters a room that at first glance appears empty, asking himself a mental question about its contents. He raises his hand as if making a gesture that symbolizes the transition to a new stage after successfully completing negotiations with another leader. While recalling his mission on the 7th floor, he notices that his gold supply has increased, allowing him to purchase a random skill box from the upgraded shop. He gets a skill that turns out to be extremely necessary at the moment, Minimap, which provides the ability to see the location of rooms and players. A diagram of a small 5-story hotel appears on the screen in front of him, confirming that the situation remains under control. He notices that Sun So-yeon is on the 5th floor and records her location. A sudden event interrupts his thoughts, causing him to turn around abruptly. Down the long corridor, Lee runs forward, pushing off sharply, creating a sense of urgency in his movement. His face expresses a mixture of rage and despair, and his hand quickly reaches forward, as if he wants to stop something. A man with a threatening look appears in the opened room, standing at the ready. There is a bloody man lying on the floor, motionless, creating a sense of a tragedy that has occurred. Lee looks forward with an angry look that suggests he is ready for action. He lunges at Kim in rage, grabbing him by the clothes, clearly wanting to figure out what happened. Shouting at him, he expresses his indignation at the ruined negotiations. Kim tries to justify himself, looking confused and scared. Memories emerge, showing how events escalated into conflict, culminating in a dramatic scene on the floor. The young man reacts sharply to the unexpected appearance of the interface, expressing obvious irritation and surprise. A text message appears in front of him, informing him that killers have the ability to see the number of murders of other people. The memories take him to a scene where a woman with glowing red eyes demonstrates her abilities. The character convinces the interlocutor of the truthfulness of his words, despite obvious mistrust on his part. The screen shows a man named Kang-du, who plays a significant role in the events that take place. Lee begins to piece together the events, realizing the connection between them. A man in a red cloak offers to sit down, confidently holding a glass of wine in his hands. The protagonist, holding a weapon in his hands, confirms his suspicions and prepares for action. Lee angrily accuses his opponent, demanding that he stop pretending to be innocent. Kang-du, wearing a cloak, mocks him, demonstrating his superiority in the current situation. He expresses his admiration for his opponent's ability with a distorted face. Lee prepares for battle while simultaneously pointing out to his opponent that he has been hiding his true identity. He points to the enemy's greed, accusing him of giving orders to kill instead of acting himself. The man strikes with his weapon, causing bright flashes of energy to fly out. The protagonist cuts a glass of wine into 2 pieces, demonstrating his strength and precision. Enemies with weapons in their hands appear in front of the main character, ready to attack. One of the antagonists confidently declares his growing strength, raising his weapon to strike, demonstrating an aggressive attitude. He challenges, confident in his army, trying to intimidate his opponent and show his strength. His expression changes to one of wariness, hinting at an unexpected turn in the situation. A fearsome-looking creature appears on the stage, its red glowing eye and raised weapon inspiring fear. The young man repels the enemy's attack, holding the weapon confidently. He smirks, stating that he is not alone, showing his readiness to fight. The kangaroo, with a menacing look and boxing gloves, looks irritated after hearing this. An unusual ally stands next to the guy, preparing for a fight, while the enemy watches them from afar. The enemy, with a sinister smile, notices that the young man is beginning to interest him more and more because of his unexpected strength. Kang Do and his subordinates surround the protagonist and the kangaroo, creating a numerical advantage. The kangaroo charges with determination, demonstrating its strength and desire to break through the enemy line. Lee, grabbing his weapon, rushes forward with the same determination, showing his readiness to confront his enemies and act on par with his ally. He performs a spinning attack targeting one of the enemies. One of the opponents rushes into the attack, making a desperate attempt. The man looks around the situation in fear, noticing a strange tail wrapped around his body. A young man standing nearby, confidently holding a sword, delivers a sharp kick. The enemy quickly flies back and crashes into the wall, unable to withstand the incredible force of the blow. Lee gratefully acknowledges the assistance provided. One of the enemies angrily rushes at the kangaroo, exclaiming that it is a threat to him. The kangaroo's punch hits its target, crushing the attacker with its powerful fist. The kangaroo's powerful counterattack is accompanied by a fiery aura, destroying another enemy. The defeated enemy quickly flies back, unable to withstand the incredible force of the blow. The protagonist and his kangaroo allies stand confidently over the defeated army, demonstrating superiority. The enemy leader is shocked to realize that his squad has been destroyed with frightening ease, but he turns to his enemy with the question why he spared his opponents. The enemy, with a frightening smile and glowing eyes, sarcastically comments on the softness that he perceives as weakness. He approaches Lee, asking a provocative question about whether he can survive in the deadly tower. A fight ensues, with the participants using their abilities and weapons, demonstrating a tense rhythm of combat. The hero notices that the enemies are regenerating in an unusual way, which makes him suspicious about their ability to regenerate. The enemies continue their advance, although their health levels have dropped significantly. Lee guesses that the enemies were revived by their own life energy. The one behind the reviving of the enemies confirms the hero's guesses, explaining how his ability reduces the stats of everyone around him. The enemy taunts, deliberately frightening the hero with his control over the situation, adding an element of psychological pressure. The protagonist realizes that if the opponent's energy is completely depleted, they will finally fall. He remembers how Kang Do condemned someone who uses others as expendable material. With indignation and fear, he declares that his life is more important than anything else. Kang Do points out that since his opponent is here, that means he also has blood on his hands. The guy admits that he is not a saint or a hero, reflecting on the fact that his actions are far from ideal. Despite his shortcomings, he is determined to follow the path that will save at least one person. He claims that this is exactly how a man should act, reinforcing his words with a determined look and a shining blade. The internal monologue confirms that he did not want to kill all his enemies, but in order to protect his friends, he is ready to take decisive action. Keeping his cool, he is going to face the danger head-on, despite the fear and threat. By activating the ability Absolute Sense, he focuses all his senses and instincts, completely immersing himself in a state of combat readiness. Finally, with a decisive move, he enters the battle, showing his willingness to go to the end for the sake of his beliefs. The enemy takes a fatal blow, flying apart in a spray of blood. Lee attacks confidently, while the enemy is already deprived of the strength to defend himself. Kang Do acknowledges the opponent, marveling at his strength as if it were a rare occurrence. The monster raises his fist in a boxing glove in triumph, expressing joy at his victory. After defeating an enemy, Lee gains his telepathic ability, feeling a surge of new possibilities. A group of people gather in a large room, where one of them expresses joy that all the participants have returned alive. The young man in white and orange clothes admits with relief that he managed to overcome the difficulties thanks to a lucky coincidence. Lee notices Soyeon sitting at a distance, remaining calm and apparently watching the events with a cool expression on his face. The slightly embarrassed hero smiles, apologizing to his interlocutor, while a kangaroo sits next to him on his shoulder. Soyeon responds that her actions should not be taken as caring for anyone. The conversation conveys a slight tension between the two characters, one of whom reacts with sarcasm, which adds humor and dynamics to the scene. The focus shifts to the character's thoughts as he wonders about his companion's choice of path. The woman's serious look shows that something significant happened in her past that influenced her actions. The mission completion notification moves the group to the next stage, their reaction highlighting their surprise at the rapid pace of events. The face expresses the awareness that unprecedented challenges lie ahead. Lee reflects on the small increases in his stats, realizing that even small progress is important on the path forward. His confident posture shows an understanding of the importance of strength, an acknowledgement that without it, words are empty, and emphasizes his desire for development. The hero clenches his fist, demonstrating his determination to achieve mastery despite all difficulties. Before him appears a spacious hall known as the Place of Skill Renewal, filled with a group of people armed with swords. The young man, despite the stress, shows confidence and determination to move forward. His companion points to those around him who resemble gladiators. The hero is surprised to notice that some of the participants have a terrifying aura, indicating their strength. The gaze is focused on those who stand out for their power, which makes one wary before the test begins. The participants quickly draw their swords in response to the sudden appearance of an unknown opponent. A hologram appears with a message that they are now on the 8th floor. Lee quickly realizes that what he sees is nothing like the previous rabbit they encountered. Finally, it becomes clear that their new handler is none other than the average manager of the Doomsday Tower. A mysterious creature with a bright eye and a rapt face stares forward, inspiring fear with its mystery. A group of people watch a holographic image of a strange creature, wondering about its name and origin. Kim warns others to be attentive, expressing his dislike of being ignored. Fighters gather in a large hall to undergo qualification to move on to the next level of testing. 2 contestants discuss that losing this challenge will result in their death. A mysterious being announces the beginning of the first phase of the test, causing everyone to prepare. Participants begin planning to form groups, expressing doubts about the strength of the upcoming enemy. One participant notes that the total number of groups and opponents does not match, causing concern. It is speculated that one of the groups will be eliminated, hinting at a fight for survival ahead. The mysterious creature asks a rhetorical question, dispelling the illusion that everything that is happening is a game. A creature with one huge eye, surrounded by a frightening aura, addresses those around him with a threatening look, expressing dissatisfaction with their ignoring. The mysterious character sits, casually explaining his terms, hinting that this is only the beginning of the test. The condition is described as additional, where killing a group member inside the portal will be considered a special addition to the main task. Lee expresses confusion and anxiety, not understanding how all this will happen. The portal opens in front of the group, and people begin to rush to find partners, trying to get into the team to go through. A tall figure in a suit suddenly blocks the traffic, and those around him look at him in surprise, wondering who it is. A man with a creepy smile asks if there are any murderers among those gathered, increasing the tension in the room. Lee wonders why the killer is looking for killers. People in the crowd look at each other, trying to figure out what this term means and who this person is. The participants, entering the portal, irritably reproach the man for his question about the presence of murderers, clearly unhappy with the waste of time on such conversations. A crowd of people rushes towards the portal. A man in a smart suit stands in front of a mystical portal, noting that this place is ideal for his intentions. He expresses slight surprise, as if he did not expect events to develop this way. 3 young men appear together, and one of them asks a question, perhaps with a proposal to join a team. The girl realizes with surprise and slight embarrassment that their team is now officially formed. Each team member finds their own rhythm, and the girl rejoices, noticing how strong and confident their group is in their actions. The remaining 4, including the killer, formed a strong team to cope with the challenges. One of the participants assesses the current situation and decides to understand the motives of the new ally. By activating the minimap, the heroes discover red dots, enemies hiding nearby, and a gold marker indicating an important target. Hoenn charges forward with determination, noting that if they catch the target, none of them will die. The characters run forward rapidly along a forest path, clearly heading towards a specific goal. The man with white hair ponders thoughtfully, expressing surprise and skepticism regarding the information he heard. A huge creature with red eyes and massive tusks appears before the heroes, instilling fear with its menacing appearance and causing a sense of danger. A group of characters stop at a clearing, their eyes looking forward, and one of them expresses surprise, realizing that their target has actually been found. A caption appears on the screen confirming the discovery of the leader of the huge creatures. The young man with orange hair cheerfully jokes about what is happening, while his white-haired companion remains serious, but still interested in the situation. The 3 characters express delight and admiration, drawing attention to the strengths of one of them, and the atmosphere is slightly relieved by a light joke. The white-haired man stares at the pink-shirted hero, leaning closer to express his doubts and noticing his unremarkable appearance. The protagonist, with a tense expression on his face, assesses the situation, reflecting on the behavior of his interlocutor, which causes slight bewilderment. The man with white hair smiles with a mysterious look. His red eyes and facial expression give a sense of menace, as if he is hiding something dark. Lee reflects on how he has always been an observer. He asks a rhetorical question about what it's like to be under the gaze. A group of characters stand in front of a monster protected by a barrier, discussing the need to remove the protection, as normal attacks have no effect on it. The protagonist assures that the barrier will probably open itself after some time, adding optimism to the situation. A tutorial appears on the screen explaining that the barrier will automatically disappear once all necessary targets have been killed, and the hero realizes that 4 of them have already been eliminated. The next shot shows the main character's sudden tension. The man in white suddenly deals a fatal blow to the girl, mercilessly cutting off her head. The hero, with an expression of anger and bewilderment, shouts at his comrade, reacting sharply to his actions. The character in the white suit calmly explains that his actions are a kind of insurance in case the barrier does not open. One of the group members is outraged by the actions of the man in white, pointing out his madness, because he is ready to kill for his own goals, even if he is a member of the team. The young man looks on with a serious expression, responding to the indignant cry of another character, who clearly cannot contain his indignation. The guy admits his mistake, realizing that he underestimated his opponent, which caused the tense situation. He realizes that he was too caught up in searching for a hidden enemy, and as a result, he lost his vigilance at the most inopportune moment. The enemy, with a smug smile, declares that he could easily deal with everyone and take the reward for himself. Another character rushes into the attack with a furious cry, not intending to let the enemy gain the upper hand. The man, clearly enjoying what was happening, draws his weapon, showing confidence in his abilities. The rapid attack ends in a collision, accompanied by a flash of energy that emphasizes the intensity of the battle. The protagonist ends up wounded, showing his suffering, but continues to fight despite the serious injury. Amid the tense situation, Lee urges Junho to retreat to avoid fatal consequences. In the final flash of the enemy's attack, Junho receives a blow that ends this dramatic episode. He finds himself under attack as a beam of light pierces through him, creating a bright explosion. The wounded man's face showed shock and horror, his eyes wide and his mouth open in a silent scream. A nearby character cries out in despair, his face expressing fear and helplessness, while a threatening figure can be seen in the background. The man lowers his head, gritting his teeth in pain and realizing his inability to protect his comrades. The scene flashes back to the past, where he, broken, remembers how he was unable to prevent the tragedy that happened back then. The man in the white suit expresses disappointment with a cold smile, mockingly noting that his opponent has become frightened, losing interest in what is happening. Filled with anger, the dark-haired character clenches his teeth in anger and shouts out an insult, showing his determination not to give up. The barrier that the elephant was inside begins to gradually open. The demon delivers a powerful blow that shakes everything around, increasing the tension of what is happening. The white-haired character asks the question in bewilderment, clearly not expecting such a development of events. A powerful explosion occurs from the impact of the massive elephant, tearing apart the ground and lighting up the sky with a flash. Lee supports the wounded man while keeping himself ready. The enemy in a white suit with a flaming sword moves confidently, radiating danger. A tense atmosphere arises in the forest as the huge beast continues to watch the people. The victim, despite his severe injuries, is still breathing, which brings some relief. The first responder is assured that serious, fatal injuries have been avoided, but remains wary. Watching the battle, he realizes that fighting against such an opponent is both dangerous and exciting. The huge beast goes on the attack again, but the confident fighter in white does not lose the initiative. A confident warrior delivers a powerful blow, demonstrating his skills in battle. The assassin's ability, known as Blade Aura, is admired for its destructive potential. The character faces a difficulty as the sword's energy moves unpredictably, making it difficult to determine the direction of the attack. The hero realizes that despite his desire to confront the enemy, he will certainly lose if he takes action right now. The timer shows the remaining time, and the character decides to first deal with the enemy leader to increase his chances of winning. Leaping towards the giant creature, the hero focuses on analyzing its combat patterns to figure out how to deal with it. Having defeated a stubborn enemy, he reflects on the complex nature of the confrontation, emphasizing the intensity of the battle. In another scene, the character notices something unexpected. Although he initially planned to find the killer, but was distracted by an interesting find, the man in the white suit decides to let his opponent go, claiming that receiving the reward is sufficient reason not to continue the fight. The hero is confused and questions his opponent's goals and actions. hinting at hidden motives. The question about the killer arouses the hero's suspicions, increasing the tense atmosphere of the situation. The enemy's smile becomes sinister as he begins to interrogate the hero with obvious interest about his knowledge of the killer. A heavily armored knight stands tall above the arena, surrounded by a group of survivors who look exhausted and shaken after yet another ordeal. Lee supports Junho, who was clearly saved from a difficult situation by him, showing that he cares about his condition and is glad that he is safe. A man in a white suit, sitting relaxed, blames another character for the chaos that has occurred. On a night scene, a clash occurs. A character with a sword provokes the hero into an answer by asking a direct and provocative question. The next shot shows the provocateur starting to laugh loudly, clearly enjoying the situation, and causing the hero to bewilderment. The man in the white suit, with a smirk on his face, acknowledges his interest in the hero, demonstrating that he considers him a more worthy opponent than he expected. The hero declares that he is ready to share information about the killers, but puts forward his own conditions, hinting at mutual interest. In the dialogue, the provocateur agrees to the hero's conditions, while emphasizing that this information should really interest him. Hoenn hints at the presence of a dangerous killer in his area, and mentions a unique weapon, adding spice to the development of the plot. Lee states that the girl in question is the King of Assassins. The gray-haired man mockingly discusses the existence of a mysterious being called the King of Assassins, while the dark-haired youth maintains a wary expression. The protagonist ponders the veracity of the legends of the King of Assassins, admitting that it may just be bait, but one that suits his purpose. A tense moment ensues between the adversaries as the man with gray hair, smiling, presses the question of who the killer really is. The opponent points his sword straight at the hero's shoulder, emphasizing his advantage in the current situation. The hero, smiling, challenges his opponent, clarifying his intentions and goals, which only increases the tension between them. He notices that his wounds still hurt, thinking about the attacker's signature move of attacking suddenly, as if it were his signature style. Lee summarizes his observations by highlighting 3 key points: the characterization of the events of the Day of Blood, the information his enemy has, and the need to combine efforts to successfully complete the mission. A sudden vision haunts a young man, showing a mysterious figure threatening his existence on a day of blood when killers can earn huge rewards. The man with the earring in his ear enjoys the chaos of the upcoming events, realizing that he has been given the legal right to kill, which causes a mixed feeling of excitement and impatience in him. The protagonist looks into the distance with a serious expression on his face, acknowledging that the wait is becoming unbearable, but prepares to take action despite the pressure of circumstances. He discusses the true nature of master assassins. The character in the pink shirt holding the sword declares his determination to stop a specific opponent, demonstrating his intention to fight to the end. The man in the white suit lying on the floor looks weakened, but his thoughts are full of determination to not let the enemy achieve his goal. Lee clenches his fist, preparing for the final fight of the current stage, despite the high cost. A figure in a mysterious mask appears on the screen, whose voice expresses bewilderment, trying to determine the identity of the new participant in the events. A creature with a menacing look and bright orange eyes mentions that the discovery of a hidden mammoth caused a chain of events that shook the game. The hero is shocked by what is happening. His facial expression conveys a mixture of disbelief and surprise, increasing the tension of the moment. The mask on the creature's face lifts, and with a sarcastic smile it declares the need for radical measures, including recruiting volunteers for murder. A group of characters react to what is happening, displaying a mixture of fear, surprise, and readiness to act in the midst of chaos. The mysterious creature muses that the player's excessive survival is due to the killing of a hidden mammoth, forcing him to reconsider his plan. Kim states that at least 4 should have died. A group of people in the room react in surprise to the unexpected words, asking questions about the connection between current events and the murder of the players. One of the participants in the event suggests that there is a minimum number of victims to complete the mission, expressing bewilderment at the necessity of their deaths for progress. The bandaged character confirms his role, stating that he could accidentally kill a few people, but finds this approach too boring and uninteresting. The rabbit states that there is a special reward for killing players, which encourages others to choose weak targets to achieve their goals. Lee expresses outrage and asks a rhetorical question about the meaning of reducing the number of players, emphasizing the contradiction in the mission goals. Another participant sarcastically points out that the need for a hidden animal was not explicitly stated. One of the characters is indignant, asking about the possibility of such treatment of the manager. Lee thinks about how Kim has only made threats, but has never touched the participants. The rabbit suddenly attacks the contestant, causing his arm to be severed, causing shock to those around him. The energy blast not only severed his arm, but also caused devastating damage to the ground. The man screams in pain as onlookers express shock and horror. The rabbit expresses its irritation with being ignored by showing strength. The moment when the enemy, through the screen, reveals his ability to interact directly with those around him, emphasizing his power and threat. The head emerges through the screen, highlighting his ability to break the boundaries of reality and interact directly with those around him. 3 observers look stunned and afraid as they watch what is happening, their faces filled with tension. Kim threatens the others with a choice, either conflict with each other or death at his hands, forcing the others to make a difficult decision. Hoen wonders what to do next, hinting at the need for a leadership decision. A character with long blonde hair and a smug smile raises his hand. Lee also expresses his desire to participate, expressing firmness and confidence in his actions. The announcement of a special mission began, accompanied by an image of 2 characters discussing what was happening. The protagonist decides that he is ready to take action despite the dangers, assuring himself that he will finish everything here. The enemy is surprised by the hero's choice, considering it unexpected that he chose him as his rival. Confident in his own strength, the enemy declares that the hero's skills are not enough to defeat him. The hero, holding a glowing sword in his hands, notes that the enemy's strength is not assessed only by the number of kills. The enemy expresses surprise that the hero knows about the killer's eyes. Lee says that there are many ways to become stronger in the tower, hinting at his own capabilities. The fight begins. The hero attacks suddenly, aiming at the enemy with incredible speed. The enemy demonstrates his strength by repelling the attack, and the hero admits that he is indeed superior. During the clash of swords, the hero feels a significant superiority of the enemy, which pushes him to look for weak points. A man with gray hair, armed with a sword, attacks his opponent, forcing him to defend himself with difficulty, despite the peculiarity of his weapon. His opponent, kneeling, tries to justify his lack of skills, which only causes bewilderment and ridicule in the attacker. The white-haired opponent smirked and stated that he expected more and wanted to continue the fun, waving his weapon around as if to show his superiority. However, the wounded Lee silently examines his weapon, realizing that his current strength is not enough to resist. With a slight grin, he says that he is not alone, making it clear that he is counting on help. A massive creature in the shape of a fighter with boxing gloves appears next, and delivers a crushing blow to the white-haired man, catching him off guard. The impact is accompanied by a flash of light, and both fighters fall from a height to the ground, creating a powerful shockwave. The gray-haired attacker shows amazing flexibility, as he lands on one hand while maintaining his balance. The tension builds as both fighters face each other again, preparing for another round of battle. The man in the white suit barely dodges a powerful blow, voicing his anger at the unexpected attack, which was more powerful than he expected. His opponent, armed with a red blade, wastes no time and attacks quickly, trying to impose his own tempo in the fight. Suddenly, a massive kangaroo-like creature intervenes in the battle, which surprises one of the participants in the battle. The man in white catches his breath and points out with obvious irritation the unfairness of using a summoned creature in a duel. His opponent reacts coldly to the reproaches, demonstrating confidence in his own strength and pointing out that numerical superiority does not matter. The man in white's frustration reaches its peak, and he decides to reveal his power by activating a weapon with a bright red glow. An explosion of powerful energy destroys the surrounding area, and he emerges from the cloud of smoke with the firm intention of destroying all his enemies. Suddenly, his opponent shouts to his companion, urging him to dodge a dangerous blow that could prove decisive. At the climax of the battle, the ground is torn apart by a powerful attack, causing panic among the opponents of the man in white. Despite the chaos, the man in white remains calm, his aura growing stronger, confirming his determination to end the fight in his favor. In rage, the opponent uses all of their strength after an attack, trying to prevent the opponent from escaping. The attacker's mana is quickly depleted. The problem is that enemy movements are extremely difficult to predict. The attacks come in a continuous stream, forcing him to use all his efforts to dodge. Thanks to his activated senses, he manages to avoid getting hit even in the most dangerous situations. The battle becomes increasingly intense as both opponents begin to attack simultaneously. As the number of targets increases, the battle becomes more difficult, but he continues to hold the line. When the enemy's blades lose their brightness, he notices a decline in magical energy. Their gazes meet at the climax of the fight when the tension reaches its peak. They rush into the attack, not intending to retreat, despite the strength of the enemy. The enemy swings his sword furiously, his face distorted with anger. Two allies attempt to attack an enemy at the same time, but their weapon hands collide with each other, causing them to interfere with each other's attack. The kangaroo looks shocked, his eyes wide open, and Hoenn is clearly alarmed and confused as to what happened. The attacker gathers energy, raising the weapon above his head, from which a bright red light emanates, increasing the intensity of the scene. The character makes a powerful blow and creates a strong explosion, which sets everything around in motion. After the explosion, the character is shown on his knees, looking exhausted, with traces of blood and battle visible around him. The kangaroo protected its owner by standing in front of him, showing its readiness to resist attack. Lee looks away, thinking about the situation, his face looking serious and a little exhausted. The opponent in the white suit with a sword comes closer, mockingly noting that his enemy has run out of options to fight. Holding his sword, he celebrates his opponent's success in battle, offering his efforts the recognition they deserve. Confident in his rightness, the character expresses self-satisfaction, pointing to the successful outcome of his actions. He arrogantly emphasizes the weakness of the enemy who fell on his knees before him. However, Lee responds by claiming that his ally is no ordinary being at all. The opponent mockingly asks a rhetorical question, ridiculing the pompous speech and calling it cliched. The perpetrator continues to argue that excessive attachments make people weaker, as can be seen in the example of their confrontation. The scene transitions into a flashback where the characters enjoy the joys of life together in times of peace. Then moments of joint battles are shown, where their unity becomes the key to victory. The protagonist realizes that a quiet life and unity are what make them real people. However, as he distances himself, he reflects on the fact that the bloody path brings with it grave consequences. Lee warns that such a path will only lead to loneliness, leaving only darkness in its wake. A man in a white suit utters a contemptuous insult, clutching a weapon in his hand, preparing to attack. His movement is swift. He delivers a powerful blow, forcing the opponent to barely dodge the attack. The aggressor rushes forward, angrily commenting on the opponent's desperate attempts to survive. Hoenn barely holds onto his weapon, retreating under enemy pressure and defending himself with all his might. The attacker, demonstrating superiority, delivers another powerful blow, emphasizing his intention to destroy the enemy. The defender is wounded, but finds the strength to declare that he survived only thanks to another person. Lee claims that thanks to his pet, he was able to completely deplete the enemy's mana supply. He tries to regain his strength by retreating, but his pursuer continues to attack. The attacker, taking advantage, falls from above, screaming for the death of his enemy. Lee, feeling a surge of power, confidently declares that it is now his turn to attack, and concentrates his energy for a decisive blow. An intense fight between two fighters, where one of them jumps from above with a sword, and the other deflects the attack, creating a bright flash of light. The emphasis is on the moment of collision of weapons, accompanied by a blinding glow that emphasizes the power of the attack. An expression of rage and despair from one of the characters, who screams from overwhelming emotions. A moment of calm after the battle, where Hoenn knelt down, breathing heavily on the ruined battlefield. The character is aware of his level increase and the ability to use a new type of attack, although he understands that this greatly depletes his resources. The hero clenches his fist with determination, realizing that he has managed to defeat his opponent. A close-up shows the hero's tired but determined expression, stained with blood but still clear-headed. He addresses the kangaroo who helped him achieve victory, expressing his sincere gratitude for the support provided. It is reported that the summoned creature can only be returned a day after its death, and the hero ponders this while looking at the interface screen. Lee looks in surprise at the hologram in which Kim appears. The character, wrapped in bandages, expresses sarcastic pleasure at the subjugation of others, then congratulates on the victory, showing his self-confidence. The rabbit warns the hero not to get carried away by his successes, hinting that a difficult path awaits him. The guy in the pink shirt demands clarification, but receives a short and cryptic answer. The group of elite warriors are presented as one of the most difficult threats in the tower, emphasizing their threat. Now that one of the assassins has been defeated, the observer says that the missions will become even more difficult. The hero understands that with each defeated enemy, climbing the tower becomes more and more difficult. He ponders the consequences, realizing that if the killers are not stopped, the world will face disaster. The guy holds the weapon in tension, not knowing what step to take next. A bright flash symbolizes the beginning of a new mission. The hero sets off into the unknown. He looks around and notices that the new location reminds him of a scene from a science fiction comic book. Hoenn clutches a scarlet blade in his hands, his gaze focused, and his posture showing readiness for battle. There is an elderly man lying on the floor who, despite what is happening, is sleeping peacefully and snoring loudly. The man stands over the old man, wondering about his identity and significance in this situation. The old man suddenly stands up, making loud sounds, which surprises the observer. The elderly man takes on a frightening appearance, covering himself with an aura of strength, hinting at his abilities and importance. An image of a martial arts master appears in the young man's mind, which increases his suspicions about the old man's skills. The blow to the head causes the young man to immediately react with pain and surprise, confirming the suddenness of the old man's actions. The elderly mentor points out the young man's impure thoughts, demonstrating the ability to read his mind. The old man, holding a stick, says that his opponent's level is extremely low, calling him trash, and urges him to focus on blocking the blow. The boy activates his ability, demonstrating incredible concentration and keen senses. Blue flashes of energy highlighting his state. He gets hit on the head again, causing him to have a pained expression on his face. The old man explains that perception can be improved, hinting at the need to develop this quality for further success. He then points out the futility of a one-sided approach, emphasizing that the opponent's body is not up to the task. The old man adds that it is not only a matter of speed or slowness of movements, blaming the lack of understanding of the importance of balance. He extends his hand forward, challenging his opponent to attack, his calm confidence clearly demonstrating superiority and readiness to fight. He then calls for him to attack, radiating confidence and inner strength himself. He asks him to show what he can do with the best sword, testing his readiness for battle and ability to use his resources. The guy decides not to underestimate his opponent, despite his age, concentrating on the upcoming test. A terrifying heavenly demon appears, whose characteristics remain unknown even in the sage's window. The man with the sword begins to concentrate his energy, demonstrating his readiness to engage in battle, with the enemy visible in the background. His level is defined as a level 2 average swordsman, which gives him serious concentration. The hero uses a powerful magical attack, creating waves of energy directed at the opponent. The streams of energy split into 2 huge blades under the influence of the old man's actions, who used his skills to neutralize the attack. The man holds the sword, directing magical energy with maximum concentration. After the powerful blow, the energy dissipated, leaving the hero in a state of amazement and slight fatigue. The older man comments condescendingly on the result, calling it a big piece of rubbish. Hoenn looks confused when he hears mocking comments about his fighting technique, which is compared to kindergarten. The elderly opponent calmly states that he will first rid the hero of his magical technique before passing on his martial arts. This causes indignation in the main character. The man panics and asks questions about whether his interlocutor is going to take away his skills, considering them the basis of the system, but receives an indifferent answer. His face expresses fear and despair, realizing that he may be left without his abilities. A sand timer is shown, symbolizing that time continues to pass, and the character realizes that he will have to start all over again. He exclaims that he is only an average swordsman, showing his excitement and concern. The old man states that a person who is fixated on his skills considers them to be his only resource, which reflects a limited mindset. The gray-haired man says that a person can live like a frog in a well, or accept the teaching to achieve something greater. He continues by emphasizing that many are willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of knowledge, and invites the character to think about his actions. The hero remembers past battles, and realizes that skills and strength have their limitations, which prevent him from moving forward. Lee falls to his knees in despair before the white-haired teacher, begging him for guidance. The protagonist, kneeling, vows to follow the master and calls himself his disciple, expressing determination in his decision. After his skills were removed, he regains his levels, marking it as an unexpected achievement. He confidently claims that he surpassed his previous results without waiting for the allotted time to expire. The master acknowledges the student's success, noting that he was able to surpass the previous version of himself thanks to his teachings. However, the master sarcastically points out that despite the progress, the hero still remains at a low-quality level. The master ponders, noticing that the hero has more potential than he had previously imagined. Looking at the hero's achievements, the master reflects that he may have qualities superior to the other disciples of the sect. From the moment the master-apprentice relationship is formally established, the master demands respect and tells the hero to bow. The hero, surprised by the new status, doubts how it happened that until now their relationship was not considered official. The master explains that he does not recognize as a master a person who only taught how to walk, hinting that a real teacher does more. The old man explains that he will begin training the young student in the art of swordsmanship, developed from the unique technique of the heavenly demon, recognized as the greatest of all time. He calls this weapon the Shadowless Phantom Sword, emphasizing its exceptional properties. The scene shows a mysterious figure in black robes sitting in front of a majestic building, symbolizing power and an ominous aura. The camera focuses on the man, whose face expresses cold determination and hidden menace, and the scroll asserts his connection to the ancient skills of an assassin. The teacher explains that access to the tower was only possible for those who had passed the tests and won the right to be inside. The young man asks the teacher a question, assuming that he too was locked in the tower, but the old man calmly calls his guess nonsense. The old man explains that he made an agreement with the tower, and his presence here is conditioned by a certain role, but he is not tied to it and can return to his world at any time. The student, reflecting on the old man's words, begins to doubt that this place is an illusion or a fake world, but comes to the conclusion that the situation is more serious than it seems. The teacher adds that, according to the terms of the contract, he cannot reveal all the details, but assures that the training will allow the student to master the art of incredible power. The old man demonstrates the power of a sword surrounded by dark energy, called the Shadowless Soul Pursuit Sword, which leaves the young man surprised. Lee calmly agrees and promises to do his best when approaching the mentor. The mentor is dissatisfied with his reaction, asks why he does not react to his words, and irritably repeats his intentions. The teacher expresses his dissatisfaction with the fact that the student does not show enthusiasm, and the student himself internally admits that this is the first time he has heard of such a technique. It emphasizes that every second is important and depicts an unusual device related to technical training. The mentor becomes serious and warns that the upcoming training will be extremely intense and requires complete dedication. The student is surprised to discover how complex the new technique is and experiences obvious difficulties. He hears that this technique was the master's greatest achievement and was honed by him throughout his life. The man wonders how such a complex technique can be presented so easily, expressing his confusion. Hoenn notices that his sword skills have deteriorated since he began learning this technique and expresses uncertainty in his actions. The instructor resolutely rushes forward to demonstrate to the student the correct execution of the technique. The old man, radiating menace with a sarcastic grin, invites Lee to engage in combat. The young man, who had just recently defeated another opponent, now doubts his strength before the fight with this teacher. The opponent seems to be mocking him, holding a stick in his hands and daring the young fighter to attack first. Realizing that there is no more time to think, the young man decides to act and, clutching his weapon, prepares for battle. Without hesitation, he rushes forward, intending to strike the first blow and disturb the peace of his opponent. An intense battle unfolds, with the speed and maneuvers of both fighters creating a confusing whirlwind of attacks and defenses. At one point, the young man tries to deliver a decisive blow, concentrating all his strength and dexterity. However, the old man, using an unusual technique, becomes almost elusive, which causes confusion in the young fighter. The old man, taking advantage of his advantage, strikes back, deftly directing his weapon. The young man, feeling the force of the blow, understands that the old man surpasses him not only in strength, but also in strategic cunning. A young man blocks an attack with a wooden stick, demonstrating his control and reaction skills. He experiences an unexpected blow, reflecting the strength and skill of the opponent standing in front of him. The older opponent confidently points out that his technique is superior to the younger man's intuitive perception. The old man skillfully performs a series of quick attacks, highlighting the difference in their skill levels. Despite the tension, the boy continues to take the blow, internally thinking about the teacher's intentions. The opponent points out the importance of texture awareness by adding mystery to his actions. The space around them transforms into a surreal landscape with a bright tree, attracting the hero's attention. The older opponent speaks philosophically about the line between the possible and the impossible, heightening the drama of the moment. A sudden movement from above forces the hero to strain all his strength to repel the blow. A powerful energy cuts through the wood, creating a bright burst of light and tension. The main character realizes that with the help of a new skill, he can destroy any obstacles. Using his strength, he creates a powerful stream of energy directed at his opponent, which appears both soft and intimidatingly strong. His opponent, an older man with a staff, attacks decisively, demonstrating his skills in combat. In response, the young warrior uses his new sword, shrouded in a dark aura, and delivers a powerful blow that knocks his opponent back. The old man, clearly amazed by what he saw, stands silently, pondering the actions of his opponent. The young man studies his new weapon with delight, calling it a sword that absorbs the shadows of souls, and admires its power. The old man, standing at a distance, asks a question, hinting at an understanding of the depth of the martial art, while the hero confesses his new awareness. The young man notes that even after carefully studying the way of the sword, not everyone manages to understand its true essence, showing respect for his mentor. The mentor says that the secret of the new sword lies not only in filling it with energy, but also in the correct harmony between the forces available to the owner. He explains with a serious look that swordsmanship is achieved through the elimination of unnecessary things. The young man looks ahead in surprise, as if he realizes something important. The young man, bowing before the teacher, thanks him for the knowledge imparted and promises to reach heights. A garment appears on the floor in front of him, causing genuine attention. The mentor, without turning around, emphasizes that the student should not forget about his purpose. The teacher hints with a smile that their paths will cross again when the student reaches the pinnacle of mastery. The space around the young man changes abruptly, and he finds himself in a dark, gloomy room. Confused, he tries to figure out where he is, remembering that he should have been somewhere else. A mysterious figure appears in the background, causing him to instantly become wary. He reacts instinctively to danger, quickly moving to the side to avoid attack. Realizing that he has been transported to a place he has seen before, he wonders why he is here and what he must do. The character offers his interlocutor a deal with a grin, holding a glass in his hand. It recalls the position left vacant by the death of a famous person and emphasizes the importance of this moment. His gaze becomes menacing as he insistently demands the elimination of his opponent, emphasizing the seriousness of his intentions. The interlocutor is clearly unsure whether he can refuse the offer, although his doubts are quickly noticed. The rabbit claims that he does not formally intend to force, but leaves the interlocutor in doubt with his tone. He warns that the consequences of failure to comply could be catastrophic. The interlocutor's indignation increases as he notices a contradiction between words and actions. The hero's reflections show the fear of losing everything that was achieved earlier and the significance of the decision made. He realizes his inability to comprehend the true nature of the force that opposes him, feeling the limitations of his current level. The overall tension reaches a climax as the hero assesses the situation and considers his next steps under pressure. The hero suddenly finds that the walkthrough has been activated, making him realize that he still has a tool that can help him figure out the situation. While examining the manual, he realizes that it provides the ability to return to the beginning of the mission, which amazes him and makes him wonder about the capabilities of the tower. The scenario suggests that if he goes back to the beginning of the mission, he will have a chance to save a certain person whose outcome was initially tragic. The character makes a decision, secured by a symbolic ritual in which he exchanges promises with a mysterious being. Lee drinks a glass of wine, symbolizing his agreement to make a deal with the rabbit, thereby confirming his willingness to accept the proposed terms. After some thought, he agrees to the proposed conditions, activating a new stage of his journey. The creature is satisfied with his choice, hinting at the beginning of something more significant. Changes to his characteristics are activated, enhancing his strength, endurance, and magical abilities. The hero notes that his sword skills are also improving, although this goes against what he was taught. However, the system informs him that the sword skill is unavailable, offering him alternative abilities and weapons. Lee gains new abilities while also gaining the status of an assassin. The guy with red hair runs up to the hero standing nearby with excitement, surprised by his condition. The redhead is then stunned by the speed with which the other character instantly moved, admitting that he didn't even have time to notice the movement. After this, a conversation begins between them, where curiosity about the hero's new power is expressed, and their achievements are discussed. Hoenn, in a new elegant outfit, confidently shows off his appearance, radiating an aristocratic grandeur, which causes admiration from the onlooking red-haired character. He notices a description of his new suit, which has a unique effect of automatically repairing damage. A group of serious-looking survivors appears in the room, and the hero notes that perhaps only these people were able to hold out. The action shifts to a general view of the hall, where the participants look forward, preparing for the next test. Their attention is drawn to something unusual. The shot shows Kim holding a glass, who states that the next challenge will be the hardest yet, raising the question of how many people will be able to handle it. A lion emerges from the portal, its roar filling the arena, emphasizing its power and menacing presence. Several more lions begin to emerge from another portal. The arena turns into a chaotic battlefield, with several lions advancing on the fighters as they prepare to fight, to the loud cheers of the crowd. With a sword in his hands, dressed in bright red, the warrior carefully examines the arena, realizing the seriousness of the upcoming test. Lions radiating a menacing purple aura surround their victims, exuding an overwhelming power that shakes the spirit of their opponents. The warrior reflects that perhaps this is where he will meet his death. As the monsters rush towards the fighters, the sky turns an ominous red, adding to the atmosphere of impending danger. One of the lions rushes forward with aggression, baring its fangs and claws, which becomes the signal for the start of a brutal fight. The warrior lets out a furious battle cry, gripping his weapon tighter, preparing to fight back against his enemies with unwavering determination. A magical bullet with a bright purple glow rushes towards the lion, hitting it straight into its body, throwing it back and leaving behind a powerful energy trail. The lion, with a bright fiery red mane, looks stunned, letting out a frightened roar. The spectators in the stands are stunned by what is happening. Some raise their hands in surprise, while others scream in excitement. Kim, with a glass of drink, observes the situation, remaining calm but with a hint of concern. Lee, weapon in hand, looks around in confusion while the other participants around him are tense. He begins to fire his weapon with visible delight, as if feeling a new power filling him with each shot. Time is turned back, creating a new starting point for the continuation of the mission. The group of heroes find themselves in a forest where digital elements indicate the resumption of their qualifying stage. The guy notices the familiar furnishings of the room, and is surprised that he managed to return to where his journey began. The hero's gaze focuses on the pop-up interface, where he realizes that the respawn location remains unchanged, despite the trials past. Opening his inventory, he notices that all of his items, including his weapons, remain untouched, which leaves him slightly confused. Lee ponders that without his sniper skills, his actions will be useless, but decides to put it off until later. The following image shows a battle scene where one of the characters gains the enemy's abilities. After this, the ability of first-level telepathy is revealed, allowing messages to be sent to up to 5 recipients simultaneously. The young man concentrates and decides to warn his allies in advance, as one of them is going through a dangerous test alone. Junyo receives a telepathic message from the protagonist, warning him to be careful. The protagonist reflects on the fact that his message should help one of his allies get out of a difficult situation. Deep in the forest, he decides to continue his journey, surrounded by trees and dense vegetation. Suddenly, a strange creature appears emitting a blue glow. Lee happily hugs the creature that appears, calling it cute and clearly happy that it is safe and sound. Suddenly, a man appears and looks at the hero and his new companion in surprise. The man in the tank top looks in surprise at the young man who is holding the pet tightly, expressing bewilderment at how it has managed to survive until now. From the darkness appear 2 frightening figures in the form of vicious dogs with burning eyes and bared teeth. A man with a demonic smile in the semi-darkness sarcastically offers the guy to become a victim of his creatures. The guy reacts to the words with caution, his eyes tensely watching what is happening. A hologram appears in front of the young man, representing the tower's intermediate manager, who speaks in a confident tone, demonstrating control over the situation. The young man realizes that the enemy intends to provoke him, and within himself he forms a determination to resist. The creature reveals important details about the current mission, increasing the tension ahead of the upcoming events. The manager notes that despite the failure to complete the mission, the participants will remain in the game, motivating them not to give up even in the most difficult situations. He dramatically announces the start of the duel, heightening the sense of inevitability of the battle that is about to begin. A man with dogs comes to the foreground. The dogs growl, ready to attack, and their owner expresses confidence in his victory. The kangaroo behind the man expresses power and intimidation, showing that their interaction carries a threat to enemies. The enemy notices the transformation and concludes that the pet has special abilities. He points at the protagonist, while unleashing the dogs, ready to attack. The main character and his partner encounter 2 huge dogs, whose aggression is clearly visible in their poses. A tense moment where the attack of the dogs is repelled by the actions of the hero and his ally. Lee assesses his ally's strengths, noting his strength, speed, and unpredictability, thanks to his 2 heads. It highlights the weakness of a trainer who is unable to control his pets in a situation that requires maximum concentration. The owner's characteristics do not correspond to the level of threat declared by his pets. The scene demonstrates the limitation placed on a pet by its bond with its owner, forced to protect its owner. Hoenn and his partner prepare to show off their strength, highlighting the rarity of trainers who can control such pets. In a forest clearing, a confrontation begins between a team of heroes and a massive monster, in the center of which they prepare for battle. The man, with a tense expression on his face, is amazed at how deftly his opponent handles the sword. The 2-headed monster reacts violently to the order to attack, rushing at enemies with incredible speed and aggression. In the midst of battle, opponents coordinate their actions in a coordinated manner, dividing the monster's attention into several directions. Using high speed and precise strikes, Lee and the kangaroo create circular movements, confusing the monster and preventing it from attacking. The partners join forces to attack the monster simultaneously, carefully waiting for the moment to deliver the decisive blow. Lee reflects on their previous fighting style, realizing that this time their tactics have completely changed thanks to working together with their partner. Their strike combines the power of the sword and the destructive force of the fist, creating a perfect synergistic attack style aimed at defeating the enemy. A powerful finishing blow delivered with both a sword and a fist produces an impressive result, demonstrating the skill and coordination of the heroes. After the final blow, the hero is convinced that his joint actions with his partner led to victory and paved the way for strengthening their team spirit. A group of characters are arranged in a circle on a glowing pattern, surrounded by a spacious hall with columns and streams of light from above. Junyo asks about the meaning of the word killer, meeting the serious gaze of the protagonist, who is being closely watched by the girl.